afternoon, and welcome, everybody. This would be the Jeff Cameron Show right here on 97.9 ESPN Radio. It is great to be with you. Appreciate you joining us. I'm Jeff. That's Tom. We're online, ESPNTallahassee.com. It's a Redemption Thursday. There's a lot going on. We're juggling a lot here. Bear with us. Should note that all guests appear via the Phone Hero hotline. Phone Hero specializing in iPhone and iPad repair. 2 locations, 2915 Cary Forest Parkway, 833 West Gain Street. Online at phoneherotlh.com. We're also on YouTube. Hello, YouTubers. You can email us if you like. JCS at 979ESPNradio.com. A lot of questions out there. A lot of FSU news. Got to mix it in with the games themselves and the NFL game tonight. Big article released today, ESPN.com, college football writer David Hale and Andrea Adelson, who I thought did a good job, kind of a comprehensive look at how Florida State's arrived at this place. It's not really newsworthy for people here immersed in what's going on day to day and has been covering this team. That article to me was written more, and I'll ask David about this. He's going to join us in the 5 o'clock hour on that Phone Hero hotline. This to me was for the college football fan watching the landscape in Texas or Pennsylvania or wherever, somebody who cares about the game in the same way we do and thinking from afar what the hell's going on at Florida State. This kind of helps summarize that for them because same thing, like when we watch USC struggle, we don't know the ins and outs of why Helton's always on the hot seat other than that they don't look like they're very good. And, what's happening at Penn State right now with Franklin or Michigan every year with, we would really benefit from a comprehensive look at their falterings.
I think it also serves if you're a casual Knoll who doesn't subscribe to one of the premium sites or doesn't listen to us often, like if you're just a guy who graduated Florida State, you live in Atlanta and you watch the games. And
it helps recount to how we arrived right here.
Yeah.
I agree. So there is that. By the way, heads up tomorrow, we're going to be at Harley-Davidson and also heads up. I'll tell you more about that in a second, but also heads up at the end of this segment. Maybe give away some things. So just something to be looking forward to. But I want to begin, and again, David Hale's going to join us in the 5 o'clock hour. It's going to be most of the 5 o'clock hour. If you are new to the program, when he joins us, we're friends. I also respect him and what he does as a journalist. And when he joins the program, we tend to talk for a long time and kind of hash things out, if you will. So we always go long form with him. And it's certainly warranted today on the heels of that article that he and Andrea Adelson penned.
He's known on this side of the glass as the clock killer.
Well, I end up calling you in advance and saying, Tom, we got to rearrange some things. I got David coming on tomorrow. And then Tom, being the producer extraordinaire that he is, he says, oh, okay, I'll do that.
I say F.
And then we go from there.
But I'm Alonzo Mourning. Yeah. But it is good content.
It is good content. So we're going to do that. But I wanted to start, and by the way, later this hour, speaking of Phone Hero, we're going to end up having Lee DeKemper on, JoeBucksFan.com, the website. Bucks Big Monday Night game coming up. And we have an edition of Scuttlebucks that's out now, and you're going to hear from him, our interview that we did earlier this morning with him. It will run in this hour. So.
And then to the gamblers, 4:30-ish today.
Joey St. Germain, that's right.
Special time.
DSG, DFS, DSG, and JCS, and all that good stuff. I'm just mixing and matching.
Sounds like an Army base.
Yeah, it does. So let's begin with the big news of the day. I'll start with the less than good news, but not surprising. Florida State's got more injuries. Corey Durden is opting out of the season. Didn't expect to see him back, but that is official now. He will not be back. It's been tough. I do wonder at what point we're going to see Florida State be in a position to where maybe they can't go. I hope that doesn't come anytime soon. The hope is that they're able to give it a go. There's not a lot of shocking news out there today regarding availability, but you are getting close to a place where something that hasn't happened this year could happen, and that would be Florida State missing games. And I can hear people going, how about this one? How about they miss this one, Jeff? The one that's on Saturday. If you're going to miss one, this would be one I'd like you to miss. But alas, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. We'll go as scheduled.
The key to me is you got to get some sandpaper in here. Some players who are more sandpaper-like over the next couple of years. If you can't sign the blue chippers, go get some players that will be tough, that will advance the mission of the program. That's the one takeaway that I didn't really focus on as we were in the trees, and that's what we are here, not the forest view, but the tree view day to day. Yeah, man. The culture was bad for everybody starting in 2014, and the more tough bodies you can bring in here, the quicker we'll be able to turn that identity around.
So what a night. The NBA draft last night is a celebration of one of Florida State's most successful programs and almost the completion. Now, you think of the completion being the national championship, cutting down the nets, holding up the trophy. Unfortunately, Florida State didn't get the opportunity to do that last year, and I do think they would have made a hell of a run to the Final Four last year, given the team that they had, the toughness that they played with, the savvy, the intelligence, and the togetherness that we all embrace, enjoy, and celebrate every time we take it over to the TLC-CC. But short of that, this was a celebration moment. Congratulations to Coach Hamilton and Stan Jones and the entirety of that staff, everybody that works under the umbrella of basketball. And congratulations in particular to the three gentlemen who made their names known yesterday. And you start with Patrick Williams going number 4 overall to the Chicago Bulls. Man alive, what a moment to celebrate. That kid came in here, high expectations. We had heard so much about him. Halfway through the season, you began to see signs that he could be a dominant player. We began to get nervous that he wasn't truly going to be a one and done. Well, that came to be, and he's a top 5 pick. And you got to go all the way back to Dave Cowens, who's a Hall of Famer, NBA Hall of Famer, to find another guy who went that high from Florida State. It is remarkable, and he did so all the while coming off the bench. And Florida State does that these days, whether it's Fiondu, Kabengele, or others. Coming off the bench doesn't mean that you get overlooked by NBA draft scouts.
Exactly. It's the validation of the message in the living rooms, on Zoom calls, I guess, these days, to these young players and their camps, because let's be honest, in college basketball, more than any other collegiate sport, you've got to make sure that the coach knows, the AAU coach, the people that are key in the decision-making of the next year. Yep. But when you're dealing with one-and-dones, they know in a year or two at the worst, we're going to be right there, either a lottery pick or an NBA draft pick. And so you've got to know that I'm not going to be damaged as a prospect by coming to Florida State and only playing 18 to 25 minutes a night if that's what the situation calls for. You will not be if you're the sixth man at FSU, the last two.
Good chance you're going to get drafted.
You're going to get drafted high.
Yeah. He's the 4th NBA lottery pick for Florida State University. He joins George McLeod, who back in 1989, my senior year of high school, I know, Tom, go ahead. You can chuckle about that. Went number 7 overall. Al Thornton, my guy, in 2007. And then Jonathan Isaac, who went 6th in 2017. All lottery picks. According to ESPN, this contract will make Patrick Williams extremely rich, to the tune of $32.1 million, with over $14 million of that guaranteed, baby. That'll work.
Good.
Yeah. No matter what happens, he's got $14.5 million in his back pocket. He's good. Devin Vassell is also drafted last night at number 11, just outside the top 10, and it was awesome to see him go to an organization that does a very good job of working with players to maximize their ability within a structure and a system that is consistently great. I know last year is an exception. San Antonio taking Devin Vassell at number 11. And you think about, for him, it's even more remarkable because he was an unheralded recruit, obviously. And then he comes in and they develop this kid into a first-round draft pick, a top 15 draft pick. Kudos to FSU and the coaching staff for developing that young man, and kudos to him for the work ethic to achieve that greatness.
Well, and kudos for finding him, too.
Well, yes.
Because if you're just going by other teams' offer lists, you're not going to find Devin Vassell. And I don't know if that's what some programs around the country do, but you could see it in the non-conference portion, the first time he stepped on the court, that he had an understanding of spacing that was akin to Angola Rodas. But he had a much better ability to finish around the rim, and he also had the size and the range to be able to do so and take on some contact. Then he developed into the shooter that we had that year in the ACC tournament. Remember, he hit the knockdown corner three against Virginia Tech. That told me two things. Number one, he's not afraid, but number two, and more importantly, Leonard Hamilton saw enough in practice to not be afraid to put him on the court in that situation.
In a crucial situation, which means he trusts him on both ends of the floor. It also means, and I said it to you after that game, well, what for in that kid? A lot of what for. I'll just put it that way. Moxie, some other stuff that I sometimes describe. And that was obvious. We were like, we got one. He's got some, and then
defiance.
Yeah, things we can't say. in here. And Trent Forrest ends up getting paid a little bit too, and we'll see what's going to happen with him. He's with the Jazz. Good news, right? That's a good kid who I think will make a team.
I was hoping he'd be drafted, but this might be like the NFL situation where you get to pick your situation a little bit if you have 2 or 3 options you're choosing from. He's just such a high floor guy, and I hope that he gets some run. Terrence Mann was the player I didn't expect to be on an NBA bench with any consistency. And look, he was more consistently on the bench than Fiondu Kabengele was. Doesn't have the upside, but he was more consistently right away. They loved him in camp.
He also had a big game or two where he scored more than 20 points.
As a rebounder, Trent is exceptional. The putback game, details of the game, he has such a high floor. I hope he pans out in Utah.
Vision, strength. He's improving all the time as a shooter. He's 6'4". He's a strong kid. Led this team to the Elite Eight, the Sweet 16. He's a guy that I think would have led them to the Final Four, but obviously we didn't play last year.
Unaffected by pressure situations, plays through injuries. Yeah, man.
Yeah, good stuff. Think about this for Florida State. For the first, third time in the last 4 years, he got multiple guys getting drafted. Kabengele, Terrence Mann last year, Jonathan Isaac, Dwayne Bacon back in 2017. I mean, you got to go back to 93 when I was here, and not a player, but a student, and celebrating all good things for Florida State at those times. We were really humming, everybody, winning the national championship in football, kicking ass in basketball. But my man, Doug Edwards and Sam Cassell that year, Rodney Dobar and all those guys, man, that was a good team, fun team. Good times right now for Florida State basketball and a celebration of those achievements. We're really happy. That's a program that is eminently likable, run by very good people with high character who work really hard.
I will forever be grateful to the profession I work in and to the program that took us out to Pasadena not once but twice. Some of the greatest experiences I've ever had. But I've got to tell you, if I'm doing a top 10 of my time living here in Tallahassee, the basketball program moments from the past 5 years, being in that building for some of those key games, some that went to overtime, some that were razor thin. I mean, the atmosphere of that place is something that I cannot wait for a season from now, sadly, to get back to full capacity.
Yeah.
Students are ready to go a half an hour before the game. You feel the electricity, and you're watching future NBA stars play before your eyes.
So I mentioned tomorrow afternoon, we'll be over at Tallahassee Harley-Davidson to promote November Bike Night. Bike Night starts Friday at 5. Got live music. You've got raffles, a bounce house for the kiddies, cold drinks, including beer.
That's right.
The right kind of donation.
For a small donation.
Tallahassee Harley-Davidson does it every month. Bike Night serves to support worthy charities. All proceeds for this month support Tin Can Inc., which is there to fight and treat and find a cure for post-traumatic stress disorder. That's a really worthy cause. Join us at Tallahassee Harley-Davidson. We'll be there tomorrow, 1745 Capitol Circle Northwest. It'll be a good time, but also to support a great cause. Bike Night officially starts at 5 o'clock. So, 5 o'clock is when it starts. Don't be rolling up at 1 o'clock.
Unless you want to buy a Harley.
Yeah, well, that's true, too. With that in mind, Tallahassee Harley-Davidson wants to give you a free gift right now. Caller number 4, 523-3776.
Times two.
Oh, Tom's in a given mood. The benevolence shines through. We're going to double down with a double gift-a-roo. 1 free Tallahassee Harley-Davidson collector's gift for both of you.
I can hear the echo of Billy Squire in the distance. That's where that giving nature is.
There it is. Valued at 75 bones. It's a high-quality sort of hanger there with a chalkboard on it where you write your notes to your significant others before they walk out the door.
Don't forget your damn lunch.
Well, my note today was
Mom.
Today is Beaujolais Nouveau Day, honey. Make sure you stop at the store and pick up some wine. That was my note today. That's true.
It's what day?
Beaujolais Nouveau. I love Beaujolais Nouveau. They release it. It's a yearly thing. It's a wine. It's Beaujolais. It's delicious, and it comes out every year. You don't know about Beaujolais Nouveau Day?
I do now.
Oh, Tom, I will bring in a bottle of Beaujolais Nouveau. It is frequently outstanding.
Is that so? So it's like a different batch every year, different taste every year kind of deal?
Different taste every year. The best year they ever had was the year that all the French died because of the heat that came in there. It was unseasonably warm, but it did a lot of great things for the grapes.
Oh.
So all the Frenchmen died, but boy, the wine was good that year, buddy. Anyhow, that's true. That's been my favorite year. Not for their death, but for the wine that was produced during their death. Let me just tell you, it's delicious.
You know what I found out? Peat Monster, the Scotch?
Yeah.
that is also every year very, very different.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Right.
Okay.
And so the first time I had it,
wasn't
it was
very good.
terrible.
It wasn't very good.
I was at a very famous place here that we can go get a pour, and the person said, no. When was the last time you tried it? A couple of years.
This year's version's better, huh?
Try this year's version. And my God, that was 2 years ago now. But if you can get your hands on the 18 Peat Monster, you're in business.
I didn't know. Because I gave up on the Peat Monster. I had some Balvenie last night. Yeah. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Caribbean Scotch. Caribbean Cask.
Caribbean Scotch.
It's good. You'd like it.
Yeah.
It's not as good as what we like.
Of course.
But it was good. It was good.
It's Saturday for the post-game show. It's Lagavulin 16 kind of afternoon.
I had the Doublewood last night, 2017.
Did you?
I did. Just a sip after the golf show. One little dram as I took in all the draft results and and then I went to bed. That's all it was, just the one. I kept things together, but it's what I do. Keep it together.
Breathe it in.
Got to. Beaujolais Nouveau Day. Harley Davidson. Tomorrow we're going to be there. Come on out there and buy a bike. Buy 7 of them. Thursday night. It's about to be Thursday night over at Southwood Golf Club. They do good stuff over there, man. Last night it was jambalaya, but tonight it's trivia night with John. And many of you celebrate trivia night with John. 6 p.m. start. Theme is sports. If you want to get involved with trivia night over at Southwood, call 850-942-4653, extension 1, to reserve your team. Tom, you're a big trivia guy. I am too, but the place is closer to you, so I don't know. It could be a big night for you.
It could be.
You could have your team.
Is it really sports, or are we going to do like X Games and who won the 2016 curling gold medal?
At Southwood, I think it would be sports. I don't think that the Southwood crowd's going to be answering questions about the X Games. Just a thought.
The answer to that is trick question. That's the Summer Olympics. I was on to you, John.
You got live music on Friday with Sonic Boom out there on the outside patio while you booze it up and eat the good food. And then, just so you know,
I think that's an understated classical band, Sonic Boom.
Sonic Boom. You should know Sunday. This appeals directly to me. Like they've got me. They don't even have to say much more than the opening line. But I have to be so careful. I lack self-control.
Parlays and Pitchers Day?
That would be it. But it's make your own omelet. God, I love omelets. I just love them, Tom. I love omelets. It's one of my 5 favorite things, omelets in the food world. I love them. Love them. Some spinach and chopped tomatoes. Oh, we'll throw in a little avocado.
So I know the buffet is going the way of the dodo in the era of COVID.
Tragically.
It is quite tragic because a breakfast buffet is one of the great things on earth.
But I didn't give you the second part. This is why they get me.
Oh, I thought it was just the omelets.
Oh, no. This is why they have it. It's ready-made. Just here you go, Mr. Cameron. Your seat is reserved. But I have to be careful. It's make your own omelet. Don't mind if I do. Followed by bottomless mimosas. Oh. For $10.
What? For $10?
$10. You're eating omelets that you decide to make with all the. Oh my! Forget it. By the way, Bloody Mary's on the list as well.
Bottomless, or they're on the list.
Make your own omelet and bottomless mimosas and Bloody Marys.
Oh, my God.
$9.99, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m.
4 hours.
4 hours. My friends at Southwood are kicking off your Sunday. They are letting you know if you want to get it on a Sunday, Southwood's where you want to go.
Hey, man, if they want to do that on, say, Tuesday or Wednesday next week, I am in.
I don't think to do that on a Tuesday, Wednesday next week.
Thanksgiving week,
How about you just say this? If they want to do that post 12:15, which is Duke, then we may be in on the. Think about the upcoming.
12:05, even closer, but
15.
They can.
That's 12:05. You're right.
12:12, 12:13.
Yeah, right after the Duke game. How about 12:06?
Yeah, if you hear a best of on 12:07, you know what the hell happened.
Yeah, or we just chose to kind of relax after a season run amok. Man. That is Brad. Brad's the GM over there. I'm talking to you, sir. You done well on a Sunday.
He just air circled the date for Brad.
I did.
He air circled the date.
You're going to be hearing from me, Brad. My wife's going to have this look on her face like, I had to bring him. He kept insisting. Don't worry, I'm driving. You'll walk into the clubhouse in the back corner. Another mimosa! Woo! My friend Tom's about to be here any minute. Woo! You're going to come through like the GIF I use.
Richard Simmons.
Richard Simmons through the door.
Woo! Woo! Woo!
I want you to do it just like that as you come to the table.
Oh, it's incredible!
Yeah, it is. We're just getting primed for some football at 1 o'clock.
Woo!
Good stuff. Good stuff. That's I saw that today. I like to get that out there. I mean, we're partners with them and our friends, obviously, Killearn Country Club, and we're very fortunate to have relationships and memberships at those two wonderful clubs. And I like to promote what they're doing and the successes that they're having. And I saw that, but I saw that Sunday slate. I went, damn.
Look, I understand. I grew up around it, the etiquette at golf clubs, country clubs. But, if you wanted to go out there this weekend and send us a video of yourself just dropping down with a Ric Flair woo as a bottomless mimosa comes your way.
Yeah, please do.
Go for it.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Who do you think, I was reading this real quick. I was reading 3 teams worse than their records, 3 teams better than their records, as posted by Gil Brandt. I like Gil Brandt.
This is pros.
Yeah, his old ass still getting it done, Gil Brandt. He does a good job. We should all aspire to be that kind of insightful at that. Yeah. He's got the Rams as better than their record, the Giants at better than their record.
I believe that.
And the Falcons as better than their record. You agree with the Falcons, too?
I agree with the last 2. Yeah.
All right. So the 3 teams worse than their records, the Bears at 5-5. Yep. That's understandable. Although they're starting to match their record now. Yeah, they still have a top 10 defense, so 5-5 sounds right.
Weren't they 5-1 or 5-2?
I think, yeah, they were. Weren't they undefeated? They were something like, the Colts beat it. Well, I don't know if that's part of the current losing streak. Seattle, they had started 5-0. They're now 6-3.
I don't know.
They just don't stop.
They're always dangerous with Russ, though. If he gets hot, then they're as good as the record is, maybe a little bit better.
So here's a note on that, by the way. Seattle's lost 3 of its last 4 games. 2 of those defeats are against Arizona in Week 7 and Buffalo Week 9, despite the fact that they scored 34 points in each of those games. That is toughy.
Wow. Okay, so it is a 4-game losing streak for the Bears.
Is it? Yeah.
I remember Nagy went on this diatribe about how we're a 5-1 football team. Nobody gives us credit.
Because we knew you weren't any good.
1 month later.
Yeah, but they did beat the Bucs. Jesus. And then finally, the last of those teams that he believes are worse than their record, and that would be the Tennessee Titans, and I knew that was coming. Titans are 6-3. They started out 5-0. And if you go back and look at that 5-0 start to the season, they beat Denver, Jacksonville, Minnesota, Houston, Minnesota. We can keep going.
Basketball.
I mean, a lot of horrible teams that they got fat on. And by the way, they beat those teams, Denver, Jacksonville, Minnesota, Houston, by a combined margin of 12 points. That got lost in the shuffle somewhere there.
It's because they had a couple of furious rallies. That's what they do in their own building.
Worst third down defense in the NFL, and they continued to struggle. They lost their left tackle, Taylor Lewin, to a torn ACL for the season. That's going to hurt. He says, look, I'm not going to write off the team. They do enough well on offense, but got to be worried about them. It's a bunched up AFC.
I'm still shook by the $10 bottomless.
I have to admit that as I was reading through the football stuff, I was kind of like, man, that $10 bottomless is really.
Yeah. My first reaction.
So what are you talking about, Mary Beth? Don't go playing jokes.
Are we going to empty out the closet? Is that what we're doing here?
For $10 bottomless mimosas, I will find new things to put them in the closet so I can empty them out.
And Bloody Marys. And we've recently added sound. What else did we add recently besides Norvell?
Norvell, yeah.
You're going to hear a lot of that. But we added something else recently, too, and I can't remember what it was. We went and hunted it down. It was a movie clip or a Saturday Night Live clip. That's what it was.
Might have been. And then we also watched the You Like It the Juice.
You like it the juice.
So where the juice equals Bloody Marys and mimosas, right?
Or point spreads, because today is Redemption Thursday. So
you like it the juice, eh? The juice is good, eh?
It is, but I really wish we could do it without the laugh track.
I couldn't find one.
I know.
There
it's
was
so
no
difficult.
isolated cut.
Because the line itself is just great, especially delivered as it is.
You like it the juice, eh?
I can cut it there.
That's as close as you get, right?
Okay.
But then you got to follow it up with the juice is good.
That's hard because you have trailing laughter when he drops the,
I have faith in your expertise in the editing room.
I got one more for you.
Susie, I was from Philly, but they got rid of me, so I'm going with the Giants.
The incredulousness. It turns out Chris Carter was a tough guy to deal with.
I'm sure Mike Ditka is too. Yeah.
I'm just saying he's been fired now from 2 separate places. Like
you got to find a fall guy.
You got fired at Fox. It's
hard to do.
It's really hard.
Really
hard to do. It's Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. There it is, fresh off a rocking chair win for the Bucks, 46-23 over the Panthers. It's a good time. It's always a good time, but it's especially a good time after a big win like that and going into a Monday Night Football game to talk to our friend Lita Kemper. The website, JoeBucksFan.com, always an insightful, interesting, fun read. Go to JoeBucksFan.com to find out what I'm talking about. Hello, Lee. How the hell are you, brother?
Jeff, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Well, the Bucks do what they kind of do after clunkers. They bounce back and perform really well. The last time they looked terrible, it was against the Bears in a loss that was hard to stomach, 20-19. They turned around and just absolutely hammered the Packers. And then, of course, we saw the debacle, which may be the worst played game by any team this year in the National Football League against the Saints. And then they turn around and absolutely dismantle the Panthers 46-23 in a game, frankly, where they had done a little bit more in the red zone, could have ended up in the 50s. So now we're set for the Rams, and I love the matchup because you're talking about a Bucs offense that lit it up and looked like they were in sync last week for the first time really all year with the level of consistency, going against a Rams defense that presents an awful lot of problems for a lot of people. So the matchups are everywhere. I imagine the website's been humming this week after the Bucs' big victory.
Oh, yes, it certainly has. And I've got a couple elements about the Carolina game that will bring smiles to people's faces. First one is the Panthers, they've played people tight this year. The Panthers have had 3 games this year, and by the way, you have to wonder if McCaffrey is a little bit overrated, Christian McCaffrey, because 3 games, they're 3-1 without him. So it's like, supposed to be one of your better players in the NFL. You're 3-1 without him. But here comes the interesting information. Panthers play people tight. So only 3 games this year have they had games where it wasn't a one-score game. They're 1-2 in those games. They beat the Cardinals by, I want to say, 11 points, and they got hammered by the Bucs both times.
Yeah, both times.
So here's a team that fights a lot. Every week they fight. They're in the game every week, whether it's the Chiefs, whether it's the Falcons, you name it. But yet when they play the Bucs have hammered them. That's one good thing to smile about. Another good thing to smile about, Chris Sims came up with this information. You know, obviously former Bucs quarterback, works for NBC Sports.
Yep.
He spent 1 year with the Patriots. He's an offensive assistant. And he was saying he's got a podcast, Done Button. And on his podcast, he was saying one reason why the Bucs were so successful against Carolina this past Sunday, they got back to what they do well. And Sims thought, that Arians got way too cute for his own good with Antonio Brown. Almost like he was trying to force passes, play calls to Antonio Brown. And Sims said when the Bucs, specifically Brady, are under center in a 2 tight end formation, it's a dangerous offense. He said when Brady gets in a shotgun and the Bucs go away from that 2 tight end offense and they try to be Eric Coryell and Dan Fouts, that's when they struggle. And I thought that was very insightful.
You know, it's interesting. There are some things that Tom Brady does in play action, and he's done it his whole career. That's why he's been so well noted for it. That is really conducive to him, obviously, being under center. And the mindset that it creates and the kind of offense you want to run. And when you watch it, you do see a comfort in an ease. The other part of that is, and we talked about it off the air, the offensive line has given him time. They also create that through the run game when it's clicking, and it obviously was here. But when they go into some sort of big personnel there with 2 tight end sets, and in the case of the Long Jones run, it was a 3 tight end set, which is what you're going to do around your own goal line. I think you're right. I think you watch the comfort and the ease with which this offense performs. It also helps that this was the first game where I thought Evans' get-off on the line of scrimmage was consistent throughout. He won his individual matchups each possession, seemingly. I saw things that were indicators that he's got finally a very healthy Evans running routes again, and that will change who this team is as well.
Well, you know what? And you know this as well as anyone, Jeff. when you look at the Bears stats, you watch a game and you see the basic stats, and you see, well, wait a minute, they're not targeting Evans. There's usually a few onion skins below that stat that will explain the reason why. And you may have touched upon one. And I don't know if this is true, but it sure adds up. It sure makes sense what you said. Maybe one reason Evans wasn't being targeted so much, although we did see plays where he was wide open and Brady never threw his way in recent games, prior to Carolina, that is. And maybe that was one of the reasons that Evans, generally a smart quarterback, if you're open, you're going to get thrown to. Maybe if you're not so open, you're probably not going to get thrown to. And what you just mentioned might be a very, very big reason why Evans has been targeted. So the narrative that was leading up to the Carolina game, got to target Evans more, And Aaron said that Evans was open, but there may have been some underlying issues there that had nothing to do with Brady and Evans aren't on the same page. So you may have touched upon something that really, really makes sense to me that I'd have to look into a little bit deeper. But that very well could be it. That one of the reasons Brady wasn't throwing Evans' way as much as Jameis used to is that Evans simply wasn't getting separation or getting open enough off the line of scrimmage, like you mentioned.
Well, and he's been so good at that in his career for his size. It's uncanny how well his feet, work and how quick he is off the line. Tom and I talk about that a lot on the show. If you go back and look at his 7 catches, it's amazing to watch. He gets separation immediately. There's 4 of those in which Carolina's in press, and he just beats his man and then outruns him to a spot. So you're watching at that point, okay, there's the Evans we've always known. I actually think, it's more than a hunch just looking at the film there. I think that's accurate. I just don't think he's been healthy all season long, and that's been my frustration. But people want to create, and I'm not saying you do this, I'm just saying people in general want to create some sort of narrative about why something isn't working, and generally speaking, it shades negative. That there's a relationship problem or the coach is mad or something. It could just very well be that the guy's been hurt since day one this year. We knew he was. And whether it's a hamstring problem or an ankle problem, he's had both. We know that. That's awfully difficult when you're a receiver. You're talking about a guy that has to have a burst and a guy that's got to be able to cut and a guy that's got to be able to trust. And then you're talking about a quarterback that has to know that his receiver can do those things. If that's not in line, then he's going to go elsewhere. So I don't think it's any secret there. I think it's just straightforward. Evans looks healthy again, and that's good because we're in a crucial part of the season, and this is a very good Rams defense. I know you've had an opportunity, and I saw the stories on JoeBucksFan.com. I always love to hear players talk about going up against some all-time greats, and the Bucs will be going up against Aaron Donald this week.
Yeah, I mean, Shipley, that to me is key. And I don't think Aaron's planned this out, of course, but it's key that Shipley has experience going up against Aaron Donald, who I think it's safe to say he's a Hall of Famer. He's the best defensive tackle of our age, maybe since Warren Sapp. So that's great that he's got a lot of experience going up against Donald. And you know what, that offensive line, and I'm not even remotely suggesting that Ali Marpet should be benched. Hell no. He's a Pro Bowler. But what a difference that offensive line was. Rather than have Joe Haig at left guard, they flipped Jensen over and plugged in A.Q. Shipley at center. Holy cow, does that make a difference? And I give Arians credit. I know last week when we spoke, I said I wanted to see how this coaching staff responds to that awful puke fest that they had against the Saints. Well, they stepped up to the plate. A move like that I tip my cap to Arians for that. But yeah, it's great that they have a guy like Shipley who can come in, that can plug in at center, that's got experience with Donald, that can help his teammates out. Obviously, Shipley knows Donald better, or how to block him better than most other people, so he can help out his teammates. That's a key element right there. I agree with that.
Well, for starters, you brought up coaching adjustments and what we want to see. This is the week, man, and here I'll speak just solely as a fan. I want the Bucs to beat the Rams for lots of reasons. I'm a Bucs fan for starters. But I get so tired of hearing about the genius of Sean McVay. It's almost insulting at times, as if nobody else in football has ever thought about the things that Sean McVay does. Now, listen, he's a good coach. I'm not trying to take that away from him. That much is obvious. But I think it's insulting when people try to infer that this will be too difficult for Todd Bowles and company to handle. I mean, come on now. It's a bit absurd here. If anything, you just want to avoid the talking points on Monday Night Football, which tends to prattle on and be repetitive if something starts to go the wrong way or the right way, in this case for Sean McVay. This is the matchup you want to win from a coaching standpoint.
You mean they won't the ESPN crew and the producers, they won't have a 10-minute segment in the middle of the second quarter about a guy who's not even on the active roster? That won't happen Monday night? Holy cow. I'm still like stunned at that Monday night broadcast against the Giants. Antonio Brown. Here's something for you. You know, we were talking about, you were mentioning Evans and his health. Another guy, and we almost overlooked it, another guy who's now healthy, and darn if he didn't have a heck of a game Sunday, Chris Godwin. I mean, that catch he made, I believe it was the Bucs' second possession. Mm-hmm. The catch he made, and if I remember specifically, it was a third down play. The catch he made from Brady along the right sideline where he broke, and as soon as he broke, he saw the ball wasn't coming where he thought it was going to be, and he made an adjustment, and Brady threw a fastball right between two Carolina defenders. That was as beautiful of a play as you will see from any receiver quarterback tandem. That was prime football right there.
Real quickly on that point,
a healthy Godwin sure makes a difference.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Lee. On that point, we've come to take for granted, perhaps, how good Chris Godwin is. Not that none of us have recognized it or haven't talked about it. We have. It's that we know that when he's healthy, he, in my mind, is what makes this offense go. He's that special of a player on a lot of levels. He's tough. He does all the little things, the dirty things. He's also immensely talented. And so when you and then the role he plays in this offense, all of it adds up to him being the guy that makes this thing go. And it's no secret when he's out, the Bucs are a very different team, almost more than when anybody else is out. And so when you see him back healthy or healthier and something close to being 100%, you're reminded, oh, yeah, I knew Godwin was good, but damn, I forgot just how good he is. So you see that when he's out there making plays again. Well, I want to give you a chance. I know you always like to gush about Ronald Jones, and this is another opportunity for you here. I'll set the stage for you. I imagine you got kicked out of the booth for celebrating the 98-yard run.
Well, I wasn't in the booth, but I probably would have been. And I'm happy as heck to say I was dead wrong about Ronald Jones. I think most people were. If someone was saying they knew Ronald Jones would be doing this, I think they also wait for the tooth fairy to come at night to put 50 cents under their pillow. But I am so happy to admit I was dead wrong about Ronald Jones. That 98-yard run was special. And that's kind of what I wanted to see from him. Now, it's ridiculous and unreasonable to say you expected a 99-yard run or any kind of 90-yard run from Ronald Jones. My lasting issue with Ronald Jones, the only issue I had left with him, I wanted to see him take a run to the house. You know, the first time the Bucs played Carolina, Leonard Fournette took one to the house, game over. And I never saw that from Ronald Jones. And granted, Fournette's run was, I think, 31 yards, give or take a couple of yards. But he took one to the house. You know, it wasn't first and goal and third and goal. He took one to the house 20, 30 yards away. And I wanted to see that from Ronald Jones. Didn't expect it to be a 98-yard run, but I was so happy for him to see that. And, right now, I think it's very reasonable to say the Bucs have a Pro Bowl running back, the way he's going. This is just an observation. And it sounds like Ronald Jones needed some sort of therapy because Arians and his position coach, Todd McNair, constantly bring up how he had confidence issues. I mean, they always bring it up. No one asks them. They bring it up. They introduce it into a conversation constantly. After a while, if you're saying, well, Mike Evans is hurt, Mike Evans is hurt, Mike Evans is hurt, pretty soon you're going to, okay, Mike Evans is hurt. So the fact that these coaches for over a year constantly bring up Rojo had confidence issues, and maybe still has confidence issues. Because Arians said first thing he did when he fumbled last week against Carolina, hey, you're still my guy. I trust you. So I'm not going to take you out of the lineup. Something tells me there was something deep, if not darker, issues that Ronald Jones had, maybe dating back to prior to his draft. But I'm glad he's turned things around. Glad for him. Glad for the Bucs. And when he gets rolling, this offense, I should say, is dynamite.
Just so you know, Lee, I just wanted to do that to have fun with you. I don't have a problem with your questioning of Ronald Jones. There was plenty to question. I never thought he was as bad as maybe you did. I'm not sure I agree with my cohort here, Tom, that thinks he's great. I think he's just a good running back. He's an average to good running back who had a great moment. That's good to see. I think he's gotten better, though. He runs harder now and more consistently so. He can't catch a cold, but he can run the ball, so that's fine. You know, at some point, somebody will catch the ball out of the backfield. Even Fournette started dropping balls out of the backfield now, so it'd be nice if we had a running back catch the ball out of the backfield. But that said, in terms of their primary job of running the football with vigor, we have that. Ronald Jones has become that guy. Hey, should be a fun game. Can't wait to watch it. Nation will be watching. I can't wait to talk to you again next week, brother. Be well.
Oh, same here. Hey, you too, Jeff. Have a good one.
All right, take care. Lee DeKemper, JoeBucksFan. .com. That's fun. We'll come back and respond to that, Tom. It was just good-natured ribbing there. But Lee's good about owning up. Like, oh, no. You don't have to tell me he's Walter Payton, Lee. He's not. It's okay.
Well, I'm not saying he's Walter Payton either. I'm just saying of the three choices that we were looking at in the preseason, because Lee was on Team Shady, and then Fournette comes in, I was always about Ronald because if you looked at the end of last season, his decisiveness and physicality and how he finished the runs, it got way better. So now you've got a one-cut guy who's also more physical. I thought that was way better than what Fournette was going to bring to the table, especially as he was introduced into a new offense. But look at it. Who is more decisive between the two of them?
Yeah, no, right now it's without question Ronald Jones. And I'm happy for him to be that because really at its core, a running back needs to be, a one-cut guy. Let's go. Put your foot in the ground and run hard. He's a big-bodied guy. You look at him, he's physical. There's no reason not to hit it up in there and make people pay.
That was the thing he did when the receivers got hurt towards the end of last season. And, you got guys off the street. You've got Hyman and Grayson and all these other guys. Right. But Ronald Jones finished runs, and that was a great, great thing heading into this year. And in camp, apparently, he was the number one guy. The signing of Fournette muddied the water, but a great, great move, as Lee said, to stick with him after the fumble because it's off of a catch. It's not off of a run. And then they did the play action call, first play, the next drive, and what happens? Get a shot down the field.
Get a shot down the field, yeah. Bill Curry Ford, General Manager Sean Sullivan, incredibly serious when it comes to his love for the Buccaneers and Bucs fans. He will help you personally 7 days a week. Give him a call, email him, or visit Sean inside that beautiful Bill Curry Ford showroom 1 mile north of Raymond James Stadium. Ask for your Scuttlebucks/Joe Bucks fan discount. Sean Sullivan will do everything in his power to make sure that he helps you everything. That's the family service you can expect from Bill Curry Ford, and they've been honored by Ford headquarters many times for their outstanding service and care of customers. That's Tampa's first family of Ford for the past 60 years. Get shopping today at BillCurryFord.com. That's BillCurryFord.com. number 2, Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio, and a fine Redemption Thursday to you and yours. Hope you're doing all right. Hope there's a little pep in your step. Email the show if you want, jcs at 979espnradio.com. You can find me on Twitter at jcameron show. You can watch us on YouTube. Hello, YouTubers. Stream the show, ESPN.com. ESPN Tallahassee. It's not just random ESPN, ESPNTallahassee.com. Find it there. Wagers look like this. I took Coastal Carolina, gave the 4.5. Don't feel good about App State. Give me Coastal Carolina. They've been a fun team this year. Give me Cincinnati to pound UCF, Tom. Pound them. Give the 4. How about that?
Pound it.
Yeah. I'm going to take Iowa State minus 11 against Kansas State. Kansas State got some COVID issues. Give me Iowa State. You got to start betting the COVID angle these days. Sign of the times.
I can feel it all the way down in my plums.
I got Auburn minus 11 against Tennessee. So what does that tell you about my feelings regarding Jeremy Pruitt's time at Tennessee and where they're at? Because you guys know that I loathe the starting quarterback at Auburn.
You're saying it's Hopar Hover.
Well played. If Georgia decides that they'd like to hold Mississippi State to 0 points this week, and they could achieve that goal, most do with a little bit of effort. It's funny, Mike Leach was heralded as this great hire, and folks couldn't wait, and they are awful in a way that is unimaginable, in particular on offense, which is his forte. So why do I say that? Not for Schadenfreude reasons. I don't care about Mississippi State. They're largely irrelevant every year for the last 100 years. It's because it's a reminder it ain't just here, guys. This is a bizarro, messed up year. And they got real problems there. They can't score. They actually, oddly, got a pretty decent defense at Mississippi State. That's why I took the under in the Georgia-Mississippi State game. It's at 44.5. Georgia's quarterback play, abysmal. Mississippi State's offense, abysmal. Georgia's defense, great. Mississippi State's defense, pretty good. Give me a little 27-0 Georgia, and we'll take the under 44.5.
I like that. I like the theory there. The only fly in the ointment would be that Georgia doesn't care anymore because all their goals are off the table. So it's a big week for Kirby Smart.
It does concern me. It did occur to me when I made the wager. I agree with you. Liberty versus NC State, the exact opposite. It's a pinball machine, baby. We're going over 67 points with these two. Nobody stopping nobody. Whole lot of action breaking out in a Liberty-NC State game. That's what we got here. Go with a 50-40 final. Put that thing at 90. Let's go over 67, Liberty-NC State.
Okay.
Should be noted, Liberty with a chance to own the ACC with yet another victory. They're a better ACC team than Florida State and many others who play in this conference.
Oh, easily us, yeah.
Well, they beat Syracuse. They beat Virginia Tech. They've got 3 ACC wins. This will be their 4th. Liberty just to the ACC.
Nobody fights Liberty.
Goodness gracious. Think about the irony of Liberty's head coach being who he is and what they had in the offseason with the pool boy and the situation with that university, if you will. And it's rich. It's rich.
Some good homework.
OU minus 6.5 against Oklahoma State. It's bedlam. Now this line has moved since I placed the wager earlier today to 7.5. I don't know if that would really be something I favor, but if you got it under a touchdown, take the Sooners. Roll big over Oklahoma State.
I can feel it all the way down in my plums.
You call that a homer pick if you want to, but I don't think Oklahoma State wants any of what OU's got going on right now. We're all right. Here we go. Boomer. OU.
Sooner.
There it is. NFL, all underdogs. Green Bay plus 1.5 against Indianapolis. Houston plus 2.5 against New England. And Cincinnati plus 1.5 against Washington. You like those? You feel good about those?
Boy, I do like that NFL slate, which means there's a problem because we've reached consensus on the NFL.
We have. We may go 5-0 this week in our mutually participated in pool. You don't know?
That would be the royal we, yeah.
That would be a really good
You've only divulged 3 picks.
Yeah, I know.
There are
Well,
2 more.
There's 2 more. I feel good about those 2 too.
Simple math.
Yeah, I'm gonna do all of that. Did you watch any of them action last night, or were you watching the NBA draft, baby, where the Knowles We're having none of it. Man, what a night. Funny story. I asked you a question. Answer? Go ahead.
All right. I watched the NBA draft. I got hooked into it. So I turned it on a little bit late, and it was pick number 4. I walked to the kitchen, and the last 2 times I walked to the kitchen, something big has happened, and they said Patrick Williams. What? I wasn't expecting to hear Patrick Williams until an hour and a half from now. Devin Vassell was supposed to go first, but the Chicago Bulls fell in love with Patrick. Awesome.
It is awesome. Top 5 pick. How great is that? How exciting is that?
And they did so well, the both of them, in the interviews that they had on the ESPN broadcast last night, talking about the next step, getting in, doing work. I mean, we knew that they would do this because Leonard's program is one that you can just brag and boast about. But they did a really good job of advancing the mission of the program in the future years.
Got inside information here from Stan Jones, and I was really happy for him and Leonard and the entire FSU basketball program. He was texting us last night and had some fun with us. We were kind of joking around. He's like, well, I'm sure you're going to go over the lengthy injury list for FSU football, but if you'd like to know anything about the FSU men's basketball team, here are some nuggets about the guys. Like, he was feeling it last night. He was having some fun, and he noted their successes. But I did not know this, and this would be as it pertains to Trent Forrest. And again, thank you, Coach Jones. The NBA revamped two-way contracts in their latest session of collective bargaining. A two-way contract means in part that Forrest is available to the Jazz as well as their G League affiliate, Salt Lake City Stars, by the way. The new version of the two-way contract eliminates the old standard of 45 days of available NBA service time, which included practice. Stay with me here. Now two-way contracts are allowed 50 days of service time, which only includes games. They can practice and travel as much as they want without it impacting their service time. The players on two-way contracts, essentially the 16th and 17th man for an NBA team, can be paid a set amount in the range of $500,000 regardless of time spent at the NBA.
Okay, so that's important for this obvious reason. You see this in baseball a lot. Guys aren't called up earlier that are studs at 19 and 20 years old because the team wants another contract year.
That's correct.
They want to control their rights for another year. You're telling me that as long as Trent doesn't dress for a game, that the Jazz can keep him up with the big club and let him practice at no cost to them in terms of service time.
Yeah.
They can't, so not for Trent. That's not a great thing for him.
The $500,000 is...
That part of it is. The good part for him is he'd work with the big club a little bit more often, right? But the bad thing is that he couldn't get to his next contract sooner because the Jazz have a little bit more leverage. But he got signed. That's the most important thing.
Yeah,
and he should have, too.
And he
that
definitely
dude's
should have.
floor is so high.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for him. And then we would go back to what we were talking about here a moment ago, which is, boy, when you saw Patrick Williams, I was in a tough situation last night in terms of being able to celebrate that and embrace all that because I was doing the damn golf show, and I love the golf show, but when it's the NBA draft and we got two Knowles going, I'd like to watch it. So I was trying to pay attention to what we were doing and previewing over there at Sea Island with the RSM, and it's a good tournament. It's a rich and deep field. But I'm seeing this pop up on my notices, and Patrick Williams going 4. I'm just elated for him, and I'm elated for the basketball program as the whole, but I'm trying to stay steady Eddie with the golf. So it was not as fun as it would ordinarily be.
So the plan for me last night was to, maybe dabble a little bit in the draft, see when Devin got picked, round 10. So I was mapping that out in the time. I turned it on early. And then I saw Patrick get picked, and I'm hooked to the TV for a good hour, whatever it is, until Devin's interview is conducted, and then you get to see the graphics that ESPN put up with the 2 Florida State picks. Want to make sure that they did right by the program to continue to push the brand.
I'm so excited for Devin to go to San Antonio. We know with Pop, you're gonna be well coached and utilized properly. Yeah.
So I ended up pushing back the project I'm doing for Florida State basketball coverage on War Chant, which is to find a way through numbers. They've got great advanced analytics services. How is Florida State going to be impacted? We all know that losing 2 lottery picks in Trent Forrest is going to be a tough thing to overcome.
It's tough to replace.
But what do the numbers say about precisely where you're going to lose their impact? I didn't start that project until much later because I was so locked into the goodness that was the NBA draft. I mean, damn it, man. 2 picks in the first 11. When's the last time the football program did that?
Oh, I don't know. Why we should look that up. That's a
long time.
I should know it, but it's hard for anybody to get 2 of the first 11 picks. But yeah.
You do it in the NBA draft. That's where we are.
And the NBA draft, I would say this, whether there was a single Florida State player drafted or not, it's just such a crapshoot these days. And this has been the weirdest year ever. You didn't get to watch any of these guys. play in the NCAA tournament. And so usually you'll see guys kind of build and you recognize immediately, well, this guy's run means he's going to be a top 10 pick, or this guy here is emerging.
So we don't have the last time Florida State had 2 picks in the first 11 yet. I'm sure it's been done. It's had to have been in the great history of this university.
Well, I was trying to think if the 13 team did because we were so loaded.
Since 2016, basketball has more first-round picks than the football program.
Well, little side note for those that are uninitiated, Florida State's been struggling in football, Tom.
Yeah.
Not a lot of real good records, not a lot of
Derwin
success.
and Jalen and Dalvin didn't go in the first round.
A lot of frustrating moments there for the football program since that time that you just mapped out. So the basketball program, on the other hand, has surged to new heights and is to be celebrated. I don't know if you got to hear it. My guess is that you didn't, and I wouldn't blame you given the show that it's on, but our friend Rick Pitino was on today with J. Will, Zubin, and Key. Whatever the hell the name of that show is.
Iona's head coach is getting run. Mm-hmm.
Well, he was on talking about the need to delay the season, and he was giving compelling information, but he was embracing the ACC, saying that he believes the coaches are right, that everybody should make the NCAA tournament. Everybody this year gets in, and we delay the start of the season.
Well, of course, what I'm looking to do is to create a bigger platform for me.
Well, but he said it was for the student athletes.
Well, that's how you have to present these things. But I'm looking for the biggest platform for me. I might not even believe delay the season, but understand that I'm going to get calls to do interviews if I say we need to delay the season because it's a different thing. I've got to stand out. New Rochelle only stands out for the COVID epidemic.
And then he could talk about how he was a victim of 9/11, and he's had a big day at the office.
Well, I can tell you from the office that I have at Loftus Hall, Iona College, I can see downtown Manhattan. It makes me think of that day. Every time I look out those windows.
Dude, I can't believe it hasn't happened yet. He's got it. It's in his right hand. There it is. I mean, when he took that job, I thought, oh, Jesus, here we go. Every freaking week. I was walking to practice. You're going to hear it. Boom.
The thing is, you cannot see the skyline, but I believe he's going to claim that you can.
Mm-hmm. And only people that have been to Iona will be like, what the hell?
Also, Loftus is a dorm.
Yeah. It's the Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. not going to spend any time on golf, but I got to tell you, tournaments right after the Masters, even with a deep field like the RSM right over there at Sea Island, Georgia, are difficult to predict because there are guys that are mentally exhausted and yet very talented. So, like, Sung J M finishes second. What are you going to do with Sung J M? He's a great player. He plays every freaking week. He's usually a top 10, top 20 machine. Well, he's sitting out there today throwing up a +2 like an ass. There you are, stuck with Sung J M.
That I would file in the exhausted category.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you've also got to take into account, and I'm sure Trey Jones would agree with this, much like if you play out in Vegas, you got the Vegas flu. Well, Sea Island is a big area
fun,
for
nice,
PGA communities.
Yes.
So my guess is the field is enjoying each other's company out there and maybe having a pop or two on a Wednesday night.
Well, that's why you got to go with the Mr. Consistent and the non-drinker, Webb Simpson.
Is he?
doesn't
Oh, because
drink.
he had the. Did he have a
I don't
problem?
know- No, I don't know if he ever had a problem, but he just doesn't. He might have. I don't know. But he doesn't drink for whatever reason.
Well,
And
then, yes,
you
this
can-
is a great week to take him.
he's playing okay today.
It's worth an extra shot on the field.
But they, by the way,
No pun intended.
play 2 courses over there. So, like, you may be on the tough course today and the easy course tomorrow. So you got 2 separate things going on. So makes it kind of hard.
Also, the weather, too, this time of year. Wind might be up a little bit, temperature's down, so the ball's not traveling nearly as far for 2 reasons.
It just got me thinking about, when you brought up the weather, it just got me thinking about not only the fun football that's about to get underway here. We get to that time of the year where it gets dark by the second half of the games that you're watching, the early games, that is.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, usually there's some bitterness that begins to seep into this Midwestern. I freaking love that, man. Because that means we have our windows open and we're all sitting around like, okay.
Oh, yeah, that's
Here
when
we go.
Soldier Field and Lambeau, they turn that shade of brownish yellow.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the turf looks like. Yeah, buddy. And you see the floodlights on the field. It's different lighting to it altogether.
So next hour, and I don't want to get too much into it because it's going to be all that in the last hour. I'm going to talk to David Hale about today's article on FSU. He helped pin it. And, the only thing I'll ask you, Tom, and we talked about this in the 3 o'clock hour too, but we didn't talk about this aspect. It is interesting to note that our fan base has never had to, and thus we wonder, are they equipped to, handle a slow rebuild? Because universally, and it appears, if you read the story, that most now agree, even within the program, people who would be resistant to this idea, that, it's going to be a bit. It's going to take a little time. So we've just never, this is where you've been most spoiled, where Florida State has been a group of overachievers for so long, because amongst the rich, the power brokers of college football, Florida State would be amongst the brokest.
Yeah, well, any illusion that there was a
financially
turnaround, the Louisville and Pitt games rendered that a delusion. And that's where, I think if they're the last people, the last group, maybe the 5% that were holding on to think that we could win some games, and maybe the North Carolina win meant more than it actually did, you just see it. The depth chart is eviscerated, not just through injury, but now attrition. You're talking a quarter of your roster's gone. The remaining guys, 84 out of the 115 or so, are freshmen or sophomores. That's where you got to pin your hopes, is that if they all go through this together with a couple of surgical choices for JUCO transfers, for graduate transfers, other transfers due to the COVID rules, maybe you can piecemeal something together in 2 years that can flirt with 9 or 10 wins if the schedule is favorable enough. Yeah. But for the next year, you're looking to be bowl eligible, like legit. 6 wins, not you get in because of an APR score in a 5-win season. You want to get 6 or 7 wins and then put something together to where by the end of the season, yeah, they're not talented enough, but they fight their ass off every single week and you're proud to watch that product.
You're right. And I would also say that I hear a lot today on national shows and people responding to the article about how, there's going to have to be patience exercised here, that those that are in power have got to be patient even in the face of disappointing results. And every time I hear somebody say that, I scream at the television or the radio and go, they've got no choice. The finances are going to dictate the patience necessary. There is no firing taking place anytime soon. Like the absurdity of what South Carolina just did and firing Will Muschamp, right? So it's now a promo that we're running. I think we're running. At least I heard one. Lebitard talking about how they can't pay faculty. They're furloughing people. They're laying people off left and right, and they have to pay Will Muschamp $15 million because they just fired him, right? So the absurdity of that, you're laughing. All because they want to be relevant, but they really never have been. And so you're firing that guy. I'm not saying he's the right guy. I am saying that where are you going, man? You don't have any money.
Right. The hard part, though, is if you're broke and you're trying to either add or fortify infrastructure to get you where you want to go.
Yeah.
The patience thing is a hard thing to do. It's like you come up on $500 that you didn't expect to have on this month's budget, and I'm just saying that figuratively. It could be $10,000 or something.
Right.
What do you do with it? You probably should put it away, not spend it on an extra flight or two.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Oh, no. There's no easy path here, without question. There are a lot of questions still to be answered, too. Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Good times on a Redemption Thursday. Now, a unique day in that I have a long form in the 5 o'clock hour with ESPN.com college football writer David Hale. We've promoted that the last couple of days. David and I go way back, but he and Andrea Adelson doing a thorough piece on Florida State and how we arrived in this hellish landscape for college football. So he's going to join us in the 5 o'clock hour. Wanted to make sure we had enough time, so we've moved my next guest into the 4 o'clock hour, one time only, so you get the bonus in the 4 o'clock hour here. It's time for DSG on DFS on the Jeff Cameron Show, brought to you by our friends at Downs and St. Germain Research, a full-service market research firm located in Tallahassee, has been since 1981. Downs and St. Germain Research, conducting surveys and focus groups for local, state, and national organizations. Researching to win your fantasy weekend is a lot of fun, but researching to strengthen your organization, that's a winning strategy. Online at dsg-research.com. Dr. Joseph St. Germain joins me now. Hey, Joey, how are you, brother?
I'm good, man. How you been?
I've been good. I'm gonna heed the advice this week. I'm locking in to my stacks and everything else, and it's too late for me in my season-long league, Joey. I think fantasy-wise, we're done dealing here. Just chalk it up to my ineptitude in fantasy football. But you're here to help others, not me. It's not all about me. And if you play on ESPN, tell us why Taysom Hill could be worth a pickup.
Yeah, and this is for ESPN specific for season long leagues, but I think it presents a unique opportunity for some of your viewers because the tight end is a barren wasteland this year unless you kind of have Kelsey or a couple other guys. Even Kittle's been hurt, and Taysom Hill is tight end eligible on ESPN, and we really just don't know what his packages are going to look like with Jameis in there. However, if I'm getting 10 snaps at quarterback and a guy I can start at tight end, it's going to be worthwhile. So it's just, it's not a guy I'm necessarily saying starting this week, but in all my leagues, I've picked him up just in case they expand his package so I can kind of throw him in there moving forward once we have a better idea of how that will work.
Let's go to DFS. This is fun talk here for your favorite stack. I always like this information. A lot of people do. They're locking in on this. Talk to us.
Yeah, I'm going to focus on the tournament because in the cash games, there's no real egregious mispricings. But I do, in my values, I see Deshaun Watson, Will Fuller, and Brandon Cooks all popped up. And my number one value at wide receiver was Jacoby Myers for the Patriots. And they're all in the same game. So give me that stack. And then if you're looking for a sneaky one, maybe I'm trying to figure out what's happening in Carolina at quarterback. But no matter who's in at quarterback, between Samuel, Robbie, and DJ Moore, you're playing the Lions, so you might be able to get away with a cheap stack there, so you can throw in the stars with that stack.
Nicely done. That's fun. Okay, so let's move to your NFL bets and some advice here. I like this, and I think sometimes people overlook this, myself included. When you're betting on underdogs, let's talk about this strategy.
Yeah, when I looked at what I was looking at betting this week, they were all underdogs. And then I had to actually remind myself of what I'm about to say. And that's if you're betting an underdog, you end up making money a little bit more potato chips in the long run.
Yeah.
If you 80 to 90% on the spread bet, and then put about 10 to 20% on the money line. In general, when underdogs cover, they also win at a high enough rate that you'll end up with a few more potato chips in your bowl if you do like that 80-90 split on the spread and 10 to 20% on the money line. And along those lines, the one that I'm focused on this week the most is the Eagles plus 3.5. I kind of have them around 1.5 too, but you're getting not only you getting the full 3, which is our biggest key number, but you're getting 3 in the hook. So even if the Browns win by 3, you're still getting that.
So if you've got a big bag of Ruffles or Lay's or whatever it might be, you're sprinkling those chips in over here in this bowl. Don't forget about sprinkling 3 or 4 chips over here. There's a chance to increase the bowl.
Exactly. And with enough of these interactions, you could end up with a lot more chips over time. That's what I care about.
We're just stuffing our face with chips if this all works out. It's a good time. All right, so we've got that. Tease of the week. We love teasers on the Jeff Cameron Show, and I always am excited to hear your angle on this. What's your tease of the week?
Again, with your tease, feel free to grab what I want, what I say, and kind of take what you want. But remember, with your teases, we're trying to get through 3 and 7. So I mentioned the Houston stack earlier. I can run Houston up to +8. And then I can also run the Chargers down to -2.5 against the Jets. Frankly, for the rest of the year, if I can take any team against the Jets and get it under 3, I'm in. So we'll include that one as well.
Great advice. Any team, high school or otherwise, that takes on the Jets, if you can give less than 3, take them and run to the chips bag. It's bigger than you realize. Joey, always appreciate it, brother. Be good.
Hey, have a good one, fellas.
All right, take care. Dr. Joseph St. Germain's. That's Germain. That's DSG on DFS here on the Jeff Cameron Show. As always, brought to you by our good friends at Downs and St. Germain Research, full-service market research firm in Tallahassee. Downs and St. Germain, they conduct surveys, focus groups for local, state, also national organizations. Hey, it's fun to win in fantasy, but it's also a winning strategy big time. It really helps out with your business. Online at dsg-research.com. Jeff Cameron Show continues in a moment. right, always fun to talk to Joey there, and I think I will take some advice. Oddly, my NFL picks this year, not that those are just straight picks, but my NFL picks have been better than my college picks this year.
Yeah, same. And the logic on the Jets pick, meaning if you can get fewer than 3 points or give fewer than 3 points.
At all times?
That seems pretty logical. I like it.
Fractorius is going to get the start, though. You never know. He showed some arm talent the other night. Looked good.
I think you've got to temper what you saw with the Chargers and the Dolphins, though, because the Dolphins' pass defense is for real. You can run on the Dolphins, but you cannot pass on the Dolphins.
And the sad part is the Chargers did have success passing on the Dolphins to some degree, especially with a rookie quarterback. They just suck in every other area, and the Dolphins do one bizarre thing every game to start you behind the 8 ball. They block a punt right off the bat. The ball's on the 2-yard line. Okay, thanks for playing. Here we go. We just started the game. It's every week with that team.
Yeah, it's got the New Orleans Saints team of destiny feel to it when you're just talking about non-offensive touchdowns.
Oh, it's
and
got
short
that
fields.
ridiculous Denver Broncos Tim Tebow feel of destiny to it, where every week you go, really? They won again? They're not good, but okay.
Tua is an actual quarterback.
Well, that's true. I'm just saying. There were moments that year where you go, really? They won again, in spite of that dude. You know, it was bizarre. Everything that had to happen would happen. Yeah, the Dolphins feel very favored by the gods right now, and I'm here for that, though. Good for them. A lot of long-suffering Dolphins fans, and hey, man, you know what you're going to do. It's tough times.
Well, and if you look at the 2 Florida teams that are succeeding, which that's right, 2 NFL teams in Florida are succeeding at the same time. One is organic, and one feels a little bit more store-bought. I mean, for the Dolphins, this year is just kind of a fun announcement of the things that might be coming in the future. Whereas the Bucs is, they're one of the best teams in football, but the window is closing fast.
Yeah, I think that's true. Another good draft, though, and that won't be true. That's a really good draft the Bucs just had, and all those young players on defense are good, and they will be for a long time to come. And I think, again, if you just drafted an elite offensive lineman, and he's in his rookie season, and he's Pro Bowl worthy, there's a lot that translates to future success. Godwin is early in his career. I don't know, man.
Well, the problem is, if you look at where the cap is going, you've got a problem with Godwin Evans. Brown's not going to be a part of the equation.
Well, Evans can have a good day.
He was always a rental, and it's Gronk will be gone. O.J. Howard's coming off of the injury. They picked up his extra year. So, and then Brady is, I mean, he might be the Bucs quarterback for 2 or 3 more years. If he continues down this path, he might extend and stick around a couple more.
He's exceeded expectations. I think we can say that Brady has exceeded expectations.
Physically, yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And the offensive woes are not his fault. So this is going to be a case where if he stays upright and remains healthy, I think we'll be eager to see him be here for the next year or two. And then you extend the window a little bit, because you get Vita Vea back next year. We'll see if he's all right. Howard, of course, was on his way to a Pro Bowl season. It looked like he was going to emerge finally.
Yeah, what I just don't understand how this is going to work for so many of the teams is there going to be a percentage rollback on salaries? Because how many teams are cap-strapped right now?
Yeah.
And then it's going to be a soft market otherwise for free agents. I just don't understand how you're going to make all this work.
I don't either. For now, I'm just willing to live in the present and get excited about football every week because I didn't think we were going to get it. And it seems like a familiar refrain, but I do like to remind myself of it of all times. Like, okay, the future's the future. Let's just survive now, get in here, and enjoy this.
You've got deck weather tonight for a great Thursday night NFL game. I mean, come on. What are we doing here, NFL? Every weekend there's entertainment value.
Yeah, they've done a good job. I do think, it is deck weather, isn't it? I need Seattle to play at their best tonight. They look like a team that's going the wrong direction because now you've got Russ trying to do too much, if you will.
Oh, man. The worst throw all season. And he's made some bad ones. He made some bad ones against Arizona the first time around. But before halftime, the interception to the back left corner of the end zone when he's got about 10, 15 yards of room to run.
Yeah.
It's not the final play of the half. That was a decision that is so un-Russell Wilson-like when you go back to September and the early part of October. He might be playing himself out of the MVP talk that he was. I mean, he was a shoo-in about 6 games into the season.
Yeah, he sort of is right now. And a big part of that has to be, again, when you know, and it cracks me up. I hear commentators do this, and they did it with Russ the other day. And listen, Russell Wilson deserves the kind of benefit of the doubt that he gets after a bad game. He should get the benefit of the doubt. He has been Pro Bowl annually, should have probably won an MVP by now. people want to give it to him because they've come to the striking realization that he's been one of the best 3 quarterbacks in the league for a long time, and we haven't given him an MVP yet. But there are a couple of guys that have been excused for horrific throws, and in the descriptor of the analysts, it's, well, he just knows that defense is so poor, he's got to take chances, and he really doesn't have a consistent running game, and they're just got to throw all the time, and everybody knows it's coming, and I'm like, well, did you watch Jameis Winston the last 2 years where they couldn't run the ball? They had a sieve for a defense. The whole world knew he was throwing it. They were always trailing. He couldn't trust anybody to get a stop. It was 3rd and long all the time. And you never hear anybody go, well, those circumstances are pretty tough.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, that's where Carson Palmer, I think, was right. We'll never know. But Jameis was due for a meteoric rise within the offense in year 2. It's any quarterback who's good and was in that system did just that. Year 2, they understood the system. You give him Tristan Wirfs at right tackle.
Nice, yeah.
And Kappa in year 2. Kappa hasn't been a problem. Have we complained about Alex Kappa at all this year?
Well, no, but not just that. If you gave him Tristan Wirfs, Kappa, and Gronk as a blocker, all of a sudden, okay.
I don't know that you give him Gronk because I don't know that Gronk would come out of retirement to come play with
but
Jameis.
look at how good he is right now in the blocking game. It changes everything about who you are in the run game. You're ahead of the chains all the time. It's a different animal altogether. Also, if you would dial back the no risk it, no biscuit nonsense and say you don't have to throw it 20 yards down the field all the time. Like this isn't, we're throwing too many interceptions.
Right.
So dial it back.
It's probably a non-starter of an argument for a lot of reasons, but one of those would be that Tom Brady's presence snaps Bruce and Byron out of whatever mode they were in when they were coaching Jameis up to run the offense the way he did.
Right, because in truth, Jameis did not have the credibility to just stand up to them and go, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Right, and nor did he have the will, in from what I can gather. Multiple coaches have said, man, I wish he'd just tell us to go pound sand. That's what the great ones do.
Yeah, but he couldn't. He wasn't at that place yet. He's Tom Brady can tell anybody to pound sand. He could tell a Hall of Fame coach to pound sand, but and kind of did. I mean, I get it. I don't want to cry over spilled milk. We've moved on. Jameis is going to have a hell of an opportunity in New Orleans right now. They have a good offensive line. They have a run game. They've got deadly receivers. He's got a good tight end to work with. He's got a veteran coach who's a brilliant game day coach. He really, if he's comfortable, has a chance to excel here.
That's a really good game on Sunday. It's going to be the one that's locally on Fox.
Atlanta and New Orleans, yeah.
And Atlanta's more game than they have been all season long. They're bought into what Raheem Morris is doing. They're playing inspired, and that offense is lethal. It always has been. Especially with that personnel across the board, you've got 3-4 targets for them to throw to, and that's a rivalry where those two teams don't like each other. Yeah, that's a really interesting football game on Sunday.
Yeah, I think that I am very intrigued. What if he plays exceptionally well? There was a debate of will this offense be it was your typical daytime television thing, and I heard it on in the background, and Max and Stephen A are doing the thing, yelling at each other, but the question posed to them was, will the Saints offense be much more explosive now that Jameis Winston is at quarterback? And Stephen A said, well, not at all. Accuracy matters, and you can't continue to throw interceptions, and Drew Brees is an accurate veteran presence, and he's all these things. He makes the right decisions time and again. And, you can't just replace a Hall of Famer and da-da-da-da. And Max goes, I hear you. Drew Brees is a better quarterback than Jameis Winston, at least from a career standpoint. But your answer is completely wrong because it's going to be a lot more explosive. By definition, Jameis does everything better down the field than Drew Brees could ever dream of. And just launched into why it would be more explosive. It'll be more mistake-prone,
right?
But it'll be a lot more explosive.
Exactly. Explosive doesn't, come with the requirement that turnovers can't happen.
Right.
And there's no more explosive player than Jameis Winston in football.
He'll make some big-ass plays down the field.
Somebody's going to score. Yeah. Somebody's going to score on this drive.
That is correct. And that was the response from, what's his name, the former Steelers DB.
Ryan Clark.
He cracked up. He was laughing. He goes, well, you're both right. Listen, Jameis is going to give everybody an opportunity to win. He's going to give everybody an opportunity to win, and that's why it's must-see TV. You're going to see throws that you go, hey, nobody else in the league makes that throw. That's an incredible throw. And then the next time he throws a pick six, you go, nobody would have made that throw. That's ridiculous. Why would you do that?
Yeah, you know who he is? He's the casino that doesn't have green spaces on the roulette wheel. Red or black, baby. Here we go. We're flipping coins.
Let's get it on. Yeah. No, it's a wild ride, but for sure, it is going to be more explosive down the field. If you're if you're any of the Saints receivers, you're like, oh my God, it's a chance to make a play down the field.
Yeah, I think if I'm Emmanuel Sanders, I'm saying finally, because that was not working as well.
The only thing I'd say is they've perfected this nonsense crossing routes. Everything's a sit down. They have perfected it. Peyton schemes somebody open 10 yards from the line of scrimmage on every play. It's unreal.
But it's just like you're jabbing the whole fight. Now that they got a hook to go with it with Jameis arm.
They do. You're
going to be sitting down. You got safeties just looking. Their eyeballs are going to be all there at the sticks. And he's like, ooh, excuse me, Jared Cook.
Throw it down the field.
Up the seam, baby.
Yeah, perhaps. What'll go along with that is the force. And you're going to go, you didn't need it. He's 8 yards right there for a first. You don't have to do that. And that's going to be Sean Payton pulling his hair out, right?
Or maybe not. And
or
the
maybe
Bucs are cursed for 12 more years.
Oh, boy. We have to hope, really hope, that Drew wants to play another year. And, there's a lot of teams out there that need a quarterback. So Drews decides he's going to stay. He handcuffs the Saints again. They're like, really? We got to keep you because you're the Saint of New Orleans here. We've got to do this. And then Jim was like, well, I'm not sitting here being a backup again. And then somebody like the Bears finally come to their senses and go, we do need a quarterback that can get the ball down the field and do something. We suck to high heaven. Our quarterback play has been god-awful for, 50 years. Let's take a flyer on the kid. I'm just naming one place. But
they liked him before.
Yeah, somebody's going to be like, Let's give it a go.
Absurd humor moment, but I like to think that when they ask Drew Brees a question about his career, like in private moments, he has to think about it, and as he's thinking, he goes, "Blue 80, yellow 80, blue 80, yellow 80." Yes, I'd like to come back next year. But that's how he thinks.
That's how he thinks at all times.
Yeah, Drew. What about Michael Thomas? Should we cut him? He's a problem. Blue 80, yellow 80, blue 80.
Yes, cut him.
We need to cut him.
I don't think it's weird because those two celebrate together every time they make a big play. So. It's a funny thing with quarterbacks. See Brady and Antonio Brown and so many guys over the years. If you've got a dangerous weapon that is an option on every play, you'll put up with an awful lot as a quarterback, clearly.
And I promise you, he sipped on brandy, Tom Brady, had a cigar and said, plus I've got a walking billboard. He has to wear what I tell him to wear. Think about the marketing value I get for free from Antonio Brown press conferences.
Did he do the the thing is about that, and, we got sent a picture via Twitter from a listener saying, oh, God, it's infiltrated Hillsborough County. Yes, Ann Pinellas. I've seen pictures at the local CVS where all the TB12 stuff is up and the hydration powders are out. TB12 picture of Tom Smith.
Oh yeah, proprietary. I mean, it's a picture of him.
Yeah, it's a picture of him.
It's not a picture of him holding the product.
No, it's a picture of him.
It's just a picture of him from the shoulders up looking at you.
Yeah. So it's
absurd.
Yeah, the thing of it is, I always marvel at this because Tom Brady, between he and his wife, he has more money than he could ever dream of spending. So what is that? What is that? Is that I want to rule the world money? Is that what?
The same thing that makes him the guy who he is on the football field. It's this. I mean, it's the reason he makes a commercial where he says every single day.
Yeah.
Whatever makes him a quarterback who wants to play till he's 50 and play at a high level is the same thing that is translating into business.
Yeah, it's the Fisher sexually aroused commercial that you're referencing, where there's no Jimbo. Sees that, and he's like, oh, my goodness, this is incredible.
Like Fisher Price?
Oh, no. Jimbo's like, oh, there it is.
Every single day.
That's right. Woo. You can't skimp.
He's like the Vince McMahon GIF. Falling out of his chair.
Yeah. Yes, that's
my God.
Yeah. A dream come true.
Doss, you got a cigarette?
Speaking of which, Jimbo, that is, final hour forthcoming. I need to bring in David Hale, and we will read from, talk about, analyze all of this mess per the article that dropped this morning on ESPN.com, college football. He and Andrea Adelson told you about that yesterday. It came out early today. Not a hit piece at all, but definitely thorough, and he's going to join us for most of next hour. Stay tuned.
Come the
Final hour of the Jeff Cameron Show, at least for today. Redemption Thursday style, a little bit different here. I'm going to talk quickly and get the hell up out of the way because we've got a long form to get to with my man David Hale from ESPN.com. I should note, of course, as he gets set to join us, all guests appear via the Phone Hero hotline. Phone Hero specializing in iPhone and iPad repair. 2 locations, 2915 Cary Forest Parkway, 833 West Gain Street. Online at phoneherotlh.com. So you guys, I'm sure, read the article this morning. I mentioned it on yesterday's program, and since none of you ever miss any segment of this show, you knew it was coming. Florida State, not in the crosshairs at all, but the subject of, rather, a thorough examination of writers David Hale and Andrea Adelson, ESPN.com, college football. And I thought they did a comprehensive piece here. I thought it was fair. There's so much more we could get to, and that's some of what I want to talk to with David. Not only the crux of the article and the various facets of what went wrong and, you know, the blame game and all that, but also the underlying stuff, the things behind the scenes. And I think we're equipped to do that in a way that others aren't in other markets. We covered this team. We've been immersed in covering this team for some time, and David and I even worked together as cohorts in the media when he was here covering this team. So I want to pave the way. This is a really short segment right now with me. Normally, the top of the hour, we go much longer. But I got to get out now because I promised David we'd talk for the better part of an hour. And you're going to want to hear this conversation. It's getting to the bottom of it all. Coach Fisher, Willie Taggart, Mike Norvell, Stan Wilcox, Monk Bonasort, President Thrasher, David Coburn, former players. It's all in there. A lot of analysis of how we arrived where we are.
JFK blown away.
It's for those who don't get the Billy Joel references, that's what Tom's doing there, which ordinarily I'd frown upon, but it worked in that situation. There you go.
It did, just because of the list. Yeah,
it did.
Got to play the game
listing,
soon, though.
yeah, it worked. All right, so, yeah. What's the matter?
There it is.
All right, I'll shut up. David Hale joins us next. Stay tuned. I feel like I should do this more often because sometimes it feels like I only talk to my friend David Hale when things are falling to pieces. And I think he deserves more than that. Like, we could just have a pleasant conversation about all the things that are going well in our lives or with the teams that we're following, covering, watching. In my case, rooting for, admittedly. But you know, that's all right. I'm glad that he still answers the phone when these moments happen and says, I guess we're going to do it again. He along with Andrea Adelson, writing a piece on ESPN.com, college football section there, I should say. You can go and deep dive that thing and read it. I have. You should too. It was posted earlier today regarding how the hell we got to this hell place. This ridiculous dystopian football world in which Florida State is irrelevant and then some. And he joins us right now on the Jeff Cameron Show. Hello, David.
Hello, sir. I don't mind being your misery loves company. I've ingratiated myself to many a person and gotten more than a few drinks bought for me over the years by just simply being there when somebody else was angry about something.
It's good to know your role. It's good to know. Yeah. Well, I thought this was comprehensive. Let me start with that. Good job. You don't need me to say it. You and Andrea do great work. You know, this clearly was not written for folks who follow Florida State closely and who listen to this show, for example, and or have just been closely monitoring the program because they have a vested interest, they're a fan, a graduate, whatever it might be. This is written for the guy that follows college football but lives in Illinois or lives in Texas or lives wherever and from afar says, what the hell has happened to Florida State? Am I right? Was that the approach, sort of the let's let the world know why this thing has fallen off a cliff?
Yeah, so I think there was like a handful of things to it. On one hand, it is very specific. I mean, it is about Florida State. And I think there's value sometimes. We get into this, we're in a media environment these days where everything kind of comes and goes so fast that it's easy to sort of always be focused on the next little problem as opposed to taking that big step back and saying, all right, what was all of this again? And I think sometimes there's value in just like remembering the path that got us to where we are and taking it in that perspective. So for Florida State fans, that's what we were hoping to do. But the overarching thing is like what's happening at Florida State is certainly unique to Florida State in the specifics, but in the greater narrative is probably not drastically different than what's going on at Texas or at Michigan or at Nebraska. There's, I think a lot of the same dynamics at play in how football programs, elite football programs, nosedive and what keeps the really successful ones at the top. And so in some ways I wanted this to be a story that a Florida State fan would read and be like, oh yeah, man, I forgot about the turnover backpack, and like be like, oh yeah, this is all part of a larger narrative and get that. But at the same time, I wanted, a Texas fan to read it and be like, dang, I wonder if that's what's going on inside our administration right now too, and why we're here, because there is a ton of overlap there.
You guys do a good job of pointing out. I think for people who read this piece, they'll see the systemic failures. You can look at a lot of different people. I joked about it being sort of a Venn diagram, and we can all shade the circles in the areas that we find to be most at fault. But in truth, the overlap, it's all there. And that there's some truth in all of these complaints and the finger pointing that goes on in the piece. Did you and I'm getting very specific now because we talked some time ago. I knew you were writing this piece with Andrea, and I'm kind of curious along the way. David, you worked here. You covered this program under Jimbo Fisher. You have a greater understanding than most of the inner workings at Florida State. Did you discover anything along the way that surprised you or that you didn't know?
I mean, a lot of it was sort of confirmed what I already had a rough idea of, but sometimes you don't really realize quite how deep it goes, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, like, one of the things that we talked about this in 2012, 2013 in a much less significant way about sort of the duality of Jimbo Fisher and that he is his two mentors really are Bobby Bowden and Nick Saban, and how unalike those two mentors are, and how those two things sort of feed into this sort of weird in-between area that Jimbo was in. And it seemed like sort of an interesting quirk when you're winning a national championship that's the case. But then you look back now with the distance of seeing all the things that happened, and you realize how much that sort of push and pull between the mom and pop, down home, affable, easygoing, stay in the same place forever, build a culture type of thing that Bobby Bowden is, versus the modern micromanaging, big business. This is we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars coming and going, and we need to run it like a business. Nick Saban thing, and how complicated that dynamic really is. So it's one of those things that, like, yeah, we all knew that was going on. We all knew that was like an overarching narrative back when things were good. And it was just sort of like, it's not until you get to a point like Florida State's at now that you start to realize like how much that sort of magnetic pull in both directions impacted so many of the decisions and dysfunction and animosity and problematic relationships that occurred behind the scenes. Because, look, if you want to say, I want my program to be built in the model of Nick Saban, that's admirable. If you want to say, I want my program to be built in the model of Bobby Bowden, that's admirable. When you try to do both, it's really hard, and that's why I think you end up with a lot of finger pointing and a lot of people feeling like somebody else is to blame. Just because, like, there's nothing wrong with saying, I love Bobby Bowden and he did great things here, and I want to keep this program in that image. And there's nothing wrong with saying, like, Nick Saban knows how to win in current college football, and we need to be more like that. They're both right, and they're both sort of wrong.
Okay, so let's do this, because that's very complicated in here, and I agree with you. For starters, I think it underscores just how important Monk Bonasort was.
100%.
What that does is give you the link to the past with Bobby Bowden as a player who played for him and as somebody who got him, who understood him, everything about him and what this program was. But then he goes on to work in the administration and to work amongst very powerful people as Florida State builds its dynasty above and beyond what Bobby Bowden can continue to manage as he got up in age and the game began to pass him by. So he understood the two different worlds, and he got them both, and he served as the conduit between Jimbo Fisher's desires, which were insatiable. You could not satisfy Jimbo Fisher, but he understood why he needed it, and he could go talk to the administration in a more palatable way than Jimbo would. And at the same time, he understood where Florida State's culture was coming from, and also understood that the problem, David, and I know you know this, but I want to hear your thoughts on it, the problem with aspiring to be a program built in the image of Nick Saban is all of that requires gobs and gobs and gobs of money that Florida State doesn't have, because Florida State, relatively speaking, is a very young, dominant program. It really outkicked its coverage for the vast majority of that 40-year run.
Yeah. And this is where I say, like, in some ways this story is very sort of a mirror image of things at Michigan or Texas. But this is an area where I think it is exclusively a Florida State story in both of those points. Number one is that what Florida State deals with financially is complicated because it is a young, relatively speaking, donor base. There's not this entrenched old money alumni base. It is a program that has a very diffused alumni base too. I mean, look, you're asking people to drive 3.5, 4 hours to come to a game for a weekend. It's not like, dudes are just down the road. And there's also sort of this, I use the term mom and pop shop in the story, that there's a little bit of that culture, because when Florida State got good, everybody was sort of, I don't want to say surprised by it, but like everybody who's still in power came along for the ride. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So they all have their fingerprints on it a little bit. They all feel like they were a part of what made Florida State great, because it wasn't that long ago. Whereas like at Alabama, Nick Saban doesn't really have to worry about the people who were attached to Bear Bryant. There are still those Bear Bryant people, but they're sort of long gone at this point. Nick Saban has Nick Saban people there. And so all of that is just very unique to Florida State. And then on the other side of it is as you said, you had this guy in Monk Bonasort, which if there's one part, there's a ton of parts of this story that didn't make it into the story. I mean, I can't even tell you how much we didn't get to write about. But if there's a part that I really wish we could have done a little bit more on, it's about Monk, because, you have a lot of people who wanted to point the finger in different directions or had their own agendas that talked to us for this story. Every single one of them said Monk was the guy who made it all work. And I think a big reason for that was, you have a big ego in Jimbo Fisher. You have big egos in university presidents, and Andy Miller, for whether people like him or dislike him or agree with him or don't agree with him, he was a visionary. It was as much a part of the fabric of building Florida State into what it is as a program as Bobby Bowden was. It's been there forever. All of these people have reason to have an ego. Monk didn't. Monk's ego was, I love Florida State, and whatever makes Florida State better is what I care about. And so he had the respect of all of those kind of differing factions, and all of them could talk to Monk and know that what he told them back was not some BS to, tilt power in some direction or another or to push an agenda or whatever. Monk's only agenda was always what's best for Florida State. And so I think everybody respected that. And once that was not in the picture anymore, once you remove that, there was just a lot of distrust. And that's where literally everyone that I talked to would say, look, things were bad before 2016. There was bad relationships and bad blood and ill will, but it all could keep working. I mean, it was an infrastructure that wasn't ideal, but it was all workable. But once Monk wasn't there to kind of keep it all balanced, that's when things really started to fall apart.
Talking to David Hale, ESPN.com, college football writer, ACC reporter, friend of the program. I'm curious your thoughts on this. That's true. There were problems. I remember before Florida State played Louisville, before the Lamar Jackson game, as it will be forever known, I said on the airwaves that we were going to get killed, that I thought Florida State was going to get humbled and embarrassed on national television. If you remember, that's a college game day experience. It's a noon game. It's all those things. And one of the reasons I said that was that you began to see the disconnect, the growing animus from Jimbo Fisher towards the administration, in particular towards the athletic director. And in addition to that, the lack of accountability in the locker room, and that's where I wanted to pivot to here, David. Were you able to diagnose the exact moment? Is it that 2014 season, which it should be noted was an undefeated season? I would also point out that I think that the way Florida State is described having gotten blown out in the Rose Bowl against Oregon is a little bit off, in that if they don't turn it over 105 times, they're going to win the game. They're moving the ball at 7 yards a clip. Dalvin Cook's getting anything he wants, but they do turn it over, and then obviously it avalanches. Anyhow, the point is, I guess the seeds of accountability or the lack thereof, is that specifically just 2014 and then Jimbo could never get it back?
I think there's a lot to it, and which is sort of the answer I would probably give no matter what question you ask me about this story. But, part of it, and I remember saying this, you and I probably discussed this a lot at the time during 2013. First of all, I don't think anybody will ever truly appreciate how good that 2013 team was. Like, what a perfect storm of personality and talent and desire was there with that team.
And anger, David, they were also pissed off. That was the rise to the mountaintop, and they had revenge on the mind.
Yes. I mean, that's the thing. You don't look, guys like Telvin Smith and LaMarcus Joyner and Jameis Winston. I mean, those guys were hyper competitive individuals regardless. But because they had been through the bad times, because they all were on the sideline for that NC State game in 2012, which was a complete embarrassment, those types of things fed into the strive for perfection that perfectly mirrored Jimbo Fisher's approach to college football in 2013. In 2014, it just wasn't there anymore. You had a lot of guys who were just waiting out the clock to get to the NFL. There wasn't this same, live or die with every practice rep that you had the year before. And the trickle down of that was you had this really important recruiting class from 2013 and 2014 recruiting classes were really important in setting up that next generation who came in and really didn't have a lot of locker room leadership. And I talked to a lot of folks from the Jimbo era staffs who said, like, Jimbo did all he could to try to right this ship, but if you don't have leadership within the locker room, it's really hard to do. And the other part of that is that I don't know, after Jeremy Pruitt left, if there was sort of this secondary alpha male within the coaching staff. Because one of the things, and look, you've been a part of all of this too. I mean, one of the things that made Florida State, I think, great in the early part of Fisher's era was that, like, you go out on a practice field, and if you watch like the 11-on-11 scrimmages at the end of a practice, you would think that Jimbo Fisher and Mark Stoops or Jimbo Fisher and Jeremy Pruitt were about to get into a fist fight at the end of it because they wanted to win their side of a practice so badly. And Charles Kelly, you will not find a person on the face of this planet who doesn't think Charles Kelly is a wonderful human being and a really smart coach. But he wasn't that alpha male type of thing that kind of was the counter to Jimbo. And I think a little bit of that sort of trickled down into the culture of how the defense performed, of the overall locker room. And the other thing that a lot of people said is, like, you look at that 2017 staff of assistants that Jimbo had, where are they now? It's, again, this isn't a knock necessarily on, like, what they were at some point as coaches or who they are as human beings, but, like, he took Tim Brewster and Jay Graham with him to Texas A&M. Neither of them are still at A&M, by the way. Nobody else on that staff has a job comparable to what they were doing at Florida State. So I think a lot of it was sort of, Jimbo was still trying to create the same thing, but within the locker room, the players weren't looking at it the same way, and he didn't have the same type of coaching staff that could kind of force the issue when it needed to happen. And that's where you end up with sort of gimmicky stuff like their Yellow Brick Road and the contract that they were going to try harder and that kind of stuff that was frankly beneath Florida State, or should have been.
Well, that was buffoonery. I remember we would make fun of that on the air on a daily basis. Like, you're signing promissory notes? Is that what we're doing? That was pretty difficult to watch. I love this is definitely nuanced because I would maintain that Florida State was in for a fall and a reckoning if Jimbo had stayed or not. I think it's a lot of people right now, while Florida State is mired face down in the muck and losing every week by 1,000. I hear people all the time, David, say, well, they should have given Jimbo Fisher everything he wanted and this wouldn't have happened. As if they forget that the man left here at 5-6. He left with a losing record. Odell comes in and saves the day, I suppose, and they go to a bowl. But this thing was spiraling out of control. So that leads me to my next question. Was this a case where, and this would probably have been very delicate for you and Andrea, and I'm kind of curious about the behind the scenes as much as you can tell me. Was this a case where the off the field stuff for Jimbo, a very public divorce, which is mentioned in the story, there's more to that, and a lot of people in this community know about it, which makes it hard to live in this community, and he did. You've got the sickness, unfortunately, with his son, and we all can only imagine, and with great horror do so, the day-to-day pressures and sadness, the weight of that would topple any man, or certainly bring him back to their knees. Was this a case of the off-the-field stuff in his personal life, meaning that it really could not have been rectified here? He was going to need a fresh start somewhere else.
So I asked a lot of people. I think one of sort of the obvious questions that needed to be asked in doing a story like this was A, was there an avenue for Jimbo Fisher to stay at Florida State? And B, where would Florida State be if that had happened? I think that the answer to the first part, which sort of surprised me from almost everybody in Jimbo's camp that I talked to, was that, yes, there was a way for him to stay there. And in fact, he really didn't want to leave. And more for personal reasons, actually, that he was worried about the impact that it had on his boys who loved Tallahassee and did not want to leave. I think that was a really hard part of the decision for him. Again, it's sort of this dichotomy of the Saban Bowden thing with with him is he wanted to be Bobby Bowden. He wanted to create his own Bowden-esque legacy at Florida State. And I know everybody's going to say, well, why did he talk to Texas and LSU and A&M, and why was he named with every job opening in the SEC? I think Jimbo thought of it in a lot of ways as, this is my leverage. This is the way that I gain power over these other people who aren't doing what I want them to do. And, Jimbo, I think in a lot of ways was trying to sell the right things, and he was a really bad salesman about it. The pitch was bad, which really soured a lot of relationships there. But at the end of the day, I don't think Jimbo wanted to leave. But you're right. I mean, you could have given him everything that he wanted, and a year later he would have wanted something more. Mm-hmm. And because this is not dramatically. We paint Jimbo really bad in saying that type of thing, and maybe fairly. But like Dabo's always asking for more at Clemson too, because that's just how college football operates now. But Dabo asks it in a way that doesn't piss everybody else off. Dabo wants everybody else to come along for the ride with him, whereas Jimbo is essentially like asking his pit crew to come in and fix the tires and fill up the gas tank while he drove the car, whereas Dabo's like, hop in, we're going for a ride. And I think that was a big part of where the disconnect was too. So I don't think whether the issues in 2017 specifically to Jimbo had been addressed would have probably kept them there in 2018 or 2019. But at some point, these issues were going to come up again.
It's odd. It's odd, David.
And to your point, I don't know how much more he would have been able to win, given where things are right now. I know Willie Taggart was not the answer, and that made things worse.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. And by the way, we're talking to David Hale, ESPN college football writer, ACC reporter. Did Jimbo? Final thing on him, and we'll move on. Did he realize how difficult later on? I don't know how much he was able to talk to you or would talk to you off the record. I always wondered, for a man that cried after it was finally over and he was on his way to his car and some people observed him weeping, it would shock some people to hear that. But I always wondered that for a guy who maybe didn't want to leave, when that happens, when the finality of that hits you, at any point did he ever realize how difficult he made it for everybody else around him? Did he ever take stock in that?
I don't know the answer to that. I will say I talked to a number of people who are close with Jimbo who say, he recognizes that he probably made some mistakes at Florida State and would do things differently if he had them to do over again. But I also think, you are who you are, and Jimbo's not going to change who he is. And I don't know, maybe he doesn't need to change who he is. He's got the number 5 team in the country right now. But it was that dynamic with Florida State was never going to be sustainable over the long term if somebody didn't change. And look, a lot has changed at Florida State now.
Yeah.
Andy Miller has stepped down. David Coburn is the AD, not Stan Wilcox. There's a lot that has changed. So I don't know, maybe the whole dynamic, Jimbo stays the same and everything changes around him. I just know that there was no way that all of the personalities that were the key figures there could have been sustainable for very much longer, whether it was 2017, 2018, 2020, it was going to happen.
I bet you could have done another 4,000 to 5,000 words on this story, because we could dive into Stan Wilcox. We can dive into fair, not fair, Willie Taggart. We can, I think one of the things that stood out to me, and let's move forward to Willie Taggart here for a second. So he took one tact, and it turned out to be disastrous. And for the people that look from afar, they say much too quick to pull the trigger on a guy that inherited a mess. And there's some truth to that. I think that's fair. I think you can make that argument. But I think you did a good job, you and Andrea did a good job of talking to players who were there with Willie Taggart. And I thought the most damning part of the criticism of Coach Taggart, who, by the way, I got along with swimmingly, so this is no axe to grind from me, were his own players saying, basically painting the picture of disorganization and clown show antics.
Yeah. I think it was almost like it was highlighted because it was such a juxtaposition with Jimbo.
Yeah.
And, with Jimbo, on the field stuff, was so demanding and detail-oriented and hyper-focused, and literally every snap had to be perfect on the practice field. And off the field, as we document in the story, things were getting pretty bad. Willie came in and was the exact opposite of that. He was, everyone talked about what a player's first coach he was and how desperate he was to try to fix that culture, not just because you needed a better culture to win, but because he genuinely cared about those kids and wanted them to be in a better place and to get them focused on being better, more successful human beings. And all of that was great, except on the practice field, he was not focused. He was not organized. He was not detail-oriented. So much stuff slipped between the cracks. So much of the offense, you go from a Jimbo Fisher's playbook to Willie Taggart's playbook, and that's a stunning change for people who came up under Jimbo. And so, especially when you struggle early on with it, and there's a lot to dig into in terms of the staff that he had that first year and all of that. I think it was just so soured from the beginning. But, I have said all along, and I don't blame anyone who wants to say 21 games is not enough time to give a coach who inherited that situation. And I agree. But Willie was just not the right coach for that program at that time. It wasn't going to work. There was no way it was going to work. But there's a quote that is in towards the end of that Willie Taggart section that I thought was very illuminating to the whole thing, which was, fair or not about firing Willie after 21 games, it is imperative to then ask, how were so many people not behind Willie enough to give him a longer period of time? Like, if you fire a coach after 21 games, clearly there was some real disconnect within the power structure of not supporting a guy or not being behind a guy or not believing in the guy that you hired from day one, which begs the question of who's doing the hiring, who's making the decisions, who's in charge, and who is creating a vision for Florida State. Because clearly the whole Taggart situation illustrated that whoever it was doing the wrong things and had a lot of other people who weren't bought in on it. So I think, I always go back to Willie probably deserved to be fired, but it's hard to just pin all of the blame when it goes that bad that quickly on just one guy.
Oh, absolutely. It runs much deeper than that, and this is the root of the talk of systemic failure and who's in charge and what's the vision. I would ask you, I know you've heard this phrase, and when you look at Florida State, there's a way to celebrate it. In fact, the approach which a lot of people debate fiercely, and that is comprehensive excellence. And you know where I'm going with this. So for Florida State, it's a matter of great pride. You watched the NBA draft last night. I know you did. And what you saw was two players from Florida State go in the top 11. You saw a team last year that really had a great chance to win the national championship. They did win the ACC in a conference of blue bloods that spend 3 times as much on basketball that Florida State does. That's all part of that comprehensive excellence. They win track titles, softball titles, soccer titles. They win titles across the board. They're in Final Fours. We look at all of the year-end analysis, and Florida State is one of the best public universities in the country. All of these things speak to comprehensive excellence. That brings me to my next point. Jimbo didn't like that. He wanted all the money to funnel through football and a trickle-down effect and all those things. I'm not going to bore people with this, but you look at Clemson. They just cut their track and field program. You look at the fact that we're in the midst of COVID and the financial hardships that are going to hit all of these universities, have hit all of these universities. It's disproportionate to how bad it's going to hit Florida State because they're the brokest of the bunch. So I wonder now, do they have to scrap that and what little money they have just pour into football, and it will be at the expense of every other program?
And this is sort of where I go back to, there's nobody who was exclusively wrong in this story. You know what I mean? Like, there's nobody who you can say, like, everything that they're saying is wrong. They're the villain here. They all have valid points. So, like, Stan Wilcox is a very good example of, I was talking to one of our colleagues down in Tallahassee, and he said, reading the story, I think the one guy who came out looking kind of like a buffoon or looking bad was Wilcox. And I said, yeah, but if you wrote this story about Florida State basketball instead of Florida State football, Stan Wilcox is a hero. And that's true. Like, this is all sort of the point of, like, what's your identity? Who do you want to be as Florida State? And one of the really good quotes I thought in our story was there was somebody who said, Florida State doesn't need to spend like an SEC team. They need to think like an SEC team.
Yeah.
And that's it. Look, you look at the Learfield Directors Cup stuff, which is really probably the easiest metric for comprehensive excellence. And Florida State is in and around the top 10 every year. Clemson's like 60th. Miami's in the 50s or 60s. Alabama's usually in the 30s or 40s. There's a different mindset. And it's not to say that one is right and one is wrong, but you look at the public universities that are in the top of the Directors Cup standings, and it's Ohio State, Texas, and Michigan, and they've got more money than God, and they can afford to do that. Florida State is not that. They are going to be restricted financially because of all the things that we talked about earlier and the fact that they're in the ACC and get a different revenue stream than the SEC does. So it's a decision that you have to make as an administration and as a university about what you want to be. And look, I think there is a perfectly valid argument to say our football players are not more important to this school than our track athletes, and the success that we're having in all of these other sports is important, and we're proud of it. And, football is being still funded at a much higher rate than any of these other sports, and that's how it's going to be. It's a belief system. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. But at the end of the day, what is Florida? Go pick out some random dude on the street.
It's
in
football.
Iowa
The answer is
the
football. Yeah, David, it's football.
Yeah.
You know that. Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah.
It's just football, and it'll be football 10 times over.
At the end of the day, I think there's a lot of people, from Jimbo Fisher to people in the administration to Andy Miller to all the folks that have been involved that would tend to agree that you can't be both. And if they are forced to choose, they want that money going to football. So, I will say I talked to David Coburn for this story. He was very blunt in the assessment of things financially, that, they had the 20% across the board budget cut in August, and that there will be more budget impacts to come, certainly because of COVID in part. But he also said, comprehensive excellence is still a thing that we're focused on. And so I don't know. I don't know if it changes. But that's sort of where things are right now.
Well, they're screwed for right now, and whatever they decide to do, I don't really think it. And this is going to bring me to my final point, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. But this is devastating for Florida, for schools all around the country. You're seeing this. You're seeing schools with money having to cut programs. So that's dire news for Florida State. That ain't good. We could have the debate, and I think you're right. There are merits to both sides about comprehensive excellence across the board as opposed to singular dominance in football, which is the cash cow. That's the Clemson approach. They pour all their money in football and largely suck in everything else. That's it. It's tough when you're watching Florida State go to the Elite Eight and win the ACC. You talk to the average fan, they love it. They think it's the greatest thing ever. People are packing the house. Florida State, out of nowhere, has developed into a basketball school with a distinct basketball advantage at home. We never thought we'd see the day that was the case. When you go out to the College World Series again and you beat LSU on the road in Baton Rouge, people are celebrating the success and excellence of the baseball program. And when the women win yet another title, and just recently another ACC title and maybe another national title, we all celebrate that and puff out our chests. All of that goes away if you decide to go the other way and sink what remaining profits that you can make in this very difficult time into football. It just goes south in a hurry. The problem I have, and what I really wonder about, is the path out of here is a lengthy one. I know your colleague, Andrea Adelson, mentioned seasons, plural. I would too. Is Mike Norvell the right guy? Do you get that sense? I think he is, and we won't really know the answer to that for some time. And what do you think that time period looks like? Are we talking 3, 4, 5 years from now where we begin to see Florida State rise and once again threaten in the Atlantic?
So, again, one of the questions that we ask virtually everyone that we talk to is, what needs to get fixed, and do you think the right people are in place to do it? I will say everyone that I talk to on the coaching end of things says good things about Mike Norvell. They all think, I would say almost the universal answer was, if you give him enough time, he can get it done. The question is whether you give him enough time. And frankly, I think this season has proved that it had to get worse before it was going to get better.
Yep.
I am optimistic, I think, that he can do good things there. And the other guy who is sort of mentioned in the story towards the end, but I think is actually really important in all of this is Michael Alford, who is the new Andy Miller. But whereas you had a lot of sort of warring factions and different competing visions, I think that Alford really gets that. And I think he is a strong enough personality to bring those visions into alignment, but has a soft enough touch to get people behind that move. So I think, you look at David Coburn, I think, has done a really good job as AD of trying to calm the waters and put some of the things to bed that needed to be done. I think Michael Alford is going to be a very good fit and a very important figure behind the scenes there. And I think Mike Norvell is a good coach who has some good people around him, and if he can get enough talent on the field, can get things headed in the right direction again. So all of those things are positive. As I said to somebody earlier, I think, if your question is, can Florida State get back to a point where they are the second best team in the ACC Atlantic in a couple of years? Yeah, I think that's not unreasonable. It's the ACC. It's really not that hard.
Yeah.
The question is, and I think most Florida State fans would say, when are we competing with Clemson again?
Ooh.
When are we going to go up to Death Valley and beat them? And that's a much harder question for me to answer because I think it's a much longer ways away. The differentiation between those two programs right now is huge. And while you're trying to rebuild that foundation, Clemson just keeps climbing a little higher and higher. And boy, if you watch DJ Uiagalelei go out there against Notre Dame and Boston College, you don't feel much better about your life, even though Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, it's funny. I look at that kid and I go, man, we don't even have linebackers that look like that. And this guy's a quarterback. It's ridiculous. By the way, a side note, I know you got to get going, but Michael Alford, do you think he's the next athletic director?
A lot of folks pointed that direction. I will say that I don't know if it's. I would guess that it's probably a little bit of a let's see how things go for the next year and see where things are at. I get the sense talking to David Coburn, from what I heard from folks around Thrasher, that everybody, before there's a big transition like that, everybody wants to feel like a foundation has been built so that next AD is actually building something as opposed to repairing something. And I think that Michael Alford's role in making all of that work and how that goes over the next 6 to 12 months will probably tell us a whole lot.
And in the interim, we watch a game on Saturday that we're all worse off for, in that nobody likes to see things be this one-sided between the two chief rivals in football representation of the ACC. I've even had my Clemson friends say, man, come on, guys, get it together. This is it's tough to cover a game where
truth to that.
Yeah, it's boring. Yeah. Oh, man. Well, David, great piece. Good work as always. I enjoy our friendship, and I enjoy talking to you about this. Thanks for taking a lot of time today and joining us, and I hope you and the family are doing well. We'll talk real soon, buddy.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.
All right, take care. That's David Hale, ESPN.com college football writer. He and Andrea Adelson pinned the piece that is on ESPN.com today that you can read about much of the stuff, almost all of the stuff that we talked about there. There's more. It's incredible because what you do have is you have tentacles. This story does, because you start down a path and you start analyzing this facet of the problem. And you could write an entire story about that one thing, that one angle, and it would be, 9,000 words. And then you'd say, oh, but we got to shine a light over here because this guy was integral to the success or failure of this aspect. And let's start to delve into that. And as you did, you'd uncover another layer, and you'd need to talk to more people, and you'd have to find out on balance the way people thought about that particular issue. Well, in doing that, you would uncover another angle. And I know that he and Andrea, and I was approached about this story. I don't mean approached in the way that they wanted me to do anything. They talked to a lot of sources that have covered Florida State for a long time. Let me put it that way. He realized, this is too big. And we've kind of talked about this before. This is a book. It really is. I mean, you could do an entire book on this thing, but it is also interesting to note, and it makes me think of him with a heavy heart, but it also makes me smile when I think about him, that Monk Bonasort was a guy that, for a time was kind of a controversial figure, way back when I started in sports talk radio, kind of was, who emerged later on as sort of the heart and soul and a symbol of true Florida State love. And that's something that really I'm reminded of again and again when I look at what's going on here. I think to myself, man, I'm glad in a way he's not here to see this. He loved this program in such a way this would devastate him. And at the same time, admittedly, this might not be the situation Florida State would find themselves in had he remained alive. So it's Jeff Cameron Show. We'll wrap it up momentarily. Hang in. All right, go read the piece if you haven't already. I'm sure most of you have, but ESPN.com. College football, you'll read it. Final segment brought to you by Whitten Glass. Whitten Glass, a family-owned and operated business serving Tallahassee and the Big Bend area since 1945. They are Tallahassee's first family in glass replacement, highly respected for their quality of installation, both residential and commercial. Whitten Glass, 222-5781, 222-5781. And, by the way, tomorrow we'll be at Harley-Davidson. We're going to be over there broadcasting and kind of mulling about, looking at all of the hogs and figuring out about bikes and celebrating and raising money. Talk to me.
So 10 Can Inc. is the charity of choice. Every time that Tallahassee Harley-Davidson does a bike night, there is a charity that all proceeds benefit. And this is a group that helps veterans who return home with PTSD. They're fighting to discover a cure, but they also do, in the meantime, therapies and activities.
This is huge, very important.
Stuff outdoors for our veterans to bond together with their families and to get outside and to interact and be a part of something. So that's what will be there tomorrow to raise awareness about and benefit. There's going to be live music, a bounce house for the kids if you feel like doing
drinks,
that.
Big
Cold
Daddy.
beers. I can say it. There are going to be cold beers there that if you give a donation and you prove you're of age, they will give you a can of beer.
I may give. I was going to anyhow. Now we're going to double down on the donation.
There you go.
Yeah, sounds good. Tonight, up next, Scuttlebucks. Really good addition. They all are. You'll like Scuttlebucks. And then after that, little Thursday night football. Great game. Fun game. High-scoring game in all likelihood. Arizona and Seattle. You can hear it right here on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Good work out of you. Good work, Director Matthew. Our thanks to David Hale. My thanks to all of you. Thanks to Joey St. Germain. Man, we rolled on Big River today. Peace. Talk to you tomorrow.